Is that it?
Yes,
That worked?
that was my gavel. I'd like to call the Broken Arrow City Council meeting to order. Do you have invocation? Possibly? Michael?
Let's pray. Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that you've given us to just discuss all the wonderful projects and initiatives we want to accomplish this year. I pray, Lord, that you'd be with the council, city leadership, and city staff, and everything we do this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call.
Wimpy,
Here.
Gillespie, here. Parks,
Here.
Ford, here. Green.
Here.
All right, if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is over here to the right. Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 5 is general council business. 5A is the consideration of the rezoning of the Floral Haven property, and we are tabling that. We do have one citizen that would like to address that item, so I'm going to go ahead and allow him to speak on that item.
Thank you, Mayor Wimpy.
You bet.
This short, just a couple of thoughts. By the way, my name's Steve Summerall, and I am with the Union Station Homeowners Association, which is next door neighbors to Floral Haven. Just a couple of points I thought were germane. I understand that Floral Haven did not follow through on getting their legal group to call us this week, and I would just encourage, I don't see why the city should be in any big rush to approve that for them, but a couple of points. Reviewing the purpose of the zoning ordinance, there's 7 or 8 letters. Letter D is preserve the character and quality of residential neighborhoods. As they modified their site plan, we feel like that's probably, we can preserve the character of our neighborhood, but we've been there over 30 years. We have 129 homes in that neighborhood. That represents somewhere around $26 million in fair market value property that pays taxes to the state or the county or however that comes in. In doing research today, I guess cemeteries are tax exempt. Hadn't really considered that, but I think that should be considered in your deliberations with them. So just wanted you to consider all those things, and that's it. And thanks for letting me speak.
You bet. Thank you.
We will discuss this at the next council meeting, though, correct?
And he's going to share some updates.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and councilors. So Floral Haven did reach out via email to Mr. Spurgeon. I believe it was Sunday evening. The point of contact that they want to use at their corporate office was actually on vacation late last week and into some of this week. We do have a meeting scheduled with them. I believe it's Friday, if I'm not mistaken. But we're trying to schedule a meeting and have that discussion, and then it should be back on in front of you on the 21st. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Item 5B, presentation, discussion, and possible direction regarding the revenues, expenditures, and budgets of the City of Broken Arrow, Broken Arrow Municipal Authority, and the Broken Arrow Economic Development Authority. The proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. Kenny, would you like to start?
Yes. First and foremost, welcome. This is our annual workshop on our budget. Mr. Spurgeon is doing his weekly radio show, so he'll come sliding in just a few minutes and then take over. But first and foremost, on behalf of Mr. Spurgeon and behalf of Mr. Stevens and myself, I just want to thank the staff for doing this. This is a huge, heavy lift every year that we do this, and it's just getting better and better and better every year, and I think you will be amazed and surprised as we go through this. So with that, let's just go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Okay, so here's some of the highlights and pretty much the agenda that we're going through today. Obviously, the highlights and budget message, the overview. HR will give a presentation. Mr. Spurgeon started this a couple of years ago where he has a couple of the departments give a presentation about their department. much for the council and the staff that's here, but as well as the public that's watching. Then we'll have an update on the BAMA Operation and Capital OWRB loan program. Then engineering will come forward and give a presentation. Then we'll touch on bond projects, our street maintenance, which is that street sales tax program, manual fees, and then we'll follow up with questions and answers. So beginning 2025 budget considerations. We always like to start off a little bit with talking about just the cycle and then some highlights. As we said, our fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th every year. And then kind of at the high level, a blueprint for providing municipal services for the upcoming fiscal year. This is the purpose of the budget. This is what it serves. Also matches available resources with community needs. And then lastly, outlines the work plan and priorities for the organization. The city vision, mission, and opportunities that will be accomplished. First and foremost, public safety, and that was it.
Okay, all right.
I would ask
Adjourn.
for your move to approve.
Boy, is he gonna be surprised.
I told him I would get done before he got back. Okay, so public safety services and community well-being, economic development, focusing on the growth and prosperity. As you know, the economic development of any community is what sustains us for the future, so it's vital, it's important. That's my plug for Norm Stevens. Innovative municipal government operations, fiscal sustainability in our strategic public investment, transformational initiatives that help maintain a thriving and healthy community, and then our transparency and communication, which is what this administration and this governing body thrives on to the public. It's their money, we're stewards, and our job is to be transparent and communicate to them. So the budget book includes a city manager's executive summary, a proposed revenue and expenditure for each fund, proposed department budgets, special funds, proposed expenditures, revenues, and fund balance, street maintenance plan, the proposed 2024 GO bond sale. Now, if you remember, we have a sale each year, and we go through that process, and by the time we sell it around September, October, we will sit down, and if priorities change, we change. This right now is proposed. It can still change all the way up to the time of the sale. Then our Oklahoma Water Resources Board, we use the acronym OWRB. Our loan program, that is what funds our water and our wastewater program. And then the manual fees. 4 key budgeting practices, and Cindy, you might want to touch on these then.
Yeah, we estimate revenues and expenditures conservatively. We take historical and what we budget each year. Like last year we budgeted sales tax. This year we only used 1.5% over what we estimated year end to be. We ensure all funds balance, include a built-in contingency for the unexpected, which is our fund balances, and focus on long-term financial stability. The FY25 municipal budget. Based on the budget recommendation, implementation of council's ongoing #1 priority, great service. I was going to take this slide out, I apologize. Great service to the community, address our increasing demands for public infrastructure and public services as a part of our growing community, and maintain City of the Broken Arrow high quality of life. This is kind of like the same thing we just said a few slides ago. Current sales tax. We always like to tell you where our money goes. Tulsa County is 8.417%. BAMA gets 1%, general fund 1.5%, police and fire 0.3%, streets 0.25%, STCI 0.5%, and Tulsa County gets 0.367%, but we can't forget the state of Oklahoma gets 4.5%. And the Wagner County is 9.35%. And the only difference is their county sales tax. Budget challenges, the inflation, cost of goods and services, everything has gone up. And you've noticed with food, gas, and we still are having supply chain for operational needs. It's still taking a longer time, lead time for vehicles, especially the larger vehicles. And we're currently over-dependent on sales tax. FY25 work plan and priorities, they're outlined in the budget message at pages 6 through 14. The proposed FY 2025 proposed municipal budget is $490 million, $455,349. It's a 38.1% increase over FY 2024. Last year was $354,890,000. The big difference is, the next page shows it. The big difference is the capital outlay. We have a lot. We've been selling bonds since 2018, and we've had projects still. Our capital outlay right now, budgeted for this year, is 68% higher than last year, and it's because it's in different phases of construction. There is a batch that's ready to go out, that are out to bid right now, which I think, that I know of, I'm sure there's more, 40 to 60 million that are out to bid right now. So that is the main reason our budget is so much higher this year.
And if I may touch on this, as Cindy said, $275 million of that 490, that's, if I remember right, 56% of the overall budget is in our capital outlay. And as she said, that's your bond, our loans and that. So anything infrastructure-wise, building-wise, also capital outlay can include other stuff, but that's a big portion of it. And as she talked about that life, Mr. Spurgeon always talks about that life cycle of a project. From the time you get it started, you've got the design process, then roadway is usually the best one to look at. You've got your design process, then you get into your right-of-way acquisition that can take a year, then you get into utility relocation like O&G, PSO, Windstream, Cox. That can take upwards of a year before you ever get to construction. The design can take a year. So it's a 3 to 4 year process before you get there. If we have federal funds involved, some of our transportation does, through the Federal Highway Administration, that money comes down to the state of Oklahoma. Some of it comes to NCOG. And on that side of it, then there's other environmental clearances that you have to get. That can add another year. So it starts stacking up a little bit. But we are seeing they kind of all piled up on us during the COVID years. We still had a lot of work going on, but it was starting to pile up on us. We're starting to see a lot of those kick loose again. So just like I said, just touch on that a little bit. When you look at $490 million, I like to say that, and it's a perfect time to say it, $500 million. Mr. Spurgeon?
Walk in on that kind of dollar amount. I apologize. I had to talk about the budget on the BA breakdown, so it was perfect timing. So
We've covered this slide, so we can move forward. Oh, debt service. Talk about it.
Yeah, I just really want to say one more thing about the capital outlay. The capital outlay also includes the $20 million proposed for this year.
Yes.
Because it's very important that we sell on a timely basis to keep our millage where it's at. The debt service has gone up 10%, but that's basically because we sold last year and OWRB took a loan. So that's pretty much standard. It's going to keep going up every year.
So every year, the directors, as the council members know, they submit their requests for additional personnel. And we look at those very closely because obviously with the fast-growing community, there's going to be a need to add additional people. And so we asked the department directors to justify the need, to look at some of their open positions and see if there's an opportunity to transfer those funds to other areas to help in a need that maybe that is emerging and so forth. And then once we narrow it down to what I would call the priorities, and we ask all the directors to include the priorities, we take a look about what those positions could cost. So you remember when you're talking about personnel costs, it's not just the salaries of those individuals, it's the retirement contributions, it's the medical benefits and everything that goes along with that. And then we'd get a total cost of what those positions would actually do to that particular budget, and then we get a total number. And then I visit with Cindy to determine, based on projected revenues, what we believe we could afford in terms of total dollars. And then we start matching up priorities with dollars available. And this year, we're recommending to council that we add 11 positions within the organization. Right now, if council was to approve that, we would have, as is shown here in this slide, 1,011 positions, with 902 of those. We don't know what. 902 of those would be full-time, and then we have approximately 110 part-time and seasonal positions. If we go to the next slide and show those positions. So remember, we have multiple funds, So here, this is the general fund. Obviously, these are a couple of these are support positions in the HR department, which you'll hear a little bit more in just a few minutes from Kelly Cox, the Director of HR. Right-of-way agent, which actually goes and works with citizens, businesses, or whichever is applicable based on the work that we're doing. So the addition of another right-of-way agent is actually going to help us be able to move those projects through the construction project life cycle sooner. Because obviously, we can't get to construction, you'll hear Charlie talk about this a little bit, I'm assuming, is that we can't get to construction until, number one, we get the right-of-way. Designing a project is not that difficult, okay? Once the parameters have been set, it's the right-of-way and it's the relocation of the utilities that actually create the greatest amount of time. And once we get those two knocked out, then we can go to construction. And so we're gonna be looking at a lot of other opportunities to try to move projects along quicker. But I can tell you, once we add another right-of-way agent, I think that actually we're gonna be in much better shape to actually get to construction. So, utility coordinator to help with relocation of utilities, and line locate technician. These are positions within the utility department that are certainly needed with the making sure that doing the locations and then coordinating the utilities for projects is just extremely important. That's another area. Having someone that can work with the other utilities that have to relocate their lines, have someone specifically working with them, was something that Mr. Swab felt like that would actually help move projects along as well. So right here, I mean, I'm very excited about this. In fact, I just talked about it about 4 minutes ago with Skylar Cooper, is in one of the initiatives that council is aware of and has approved is the creation of the real-time crime center. Well, to do that, you need someone to manage that, and I'd like to ask the chief if he would come forward and just tell us a little bit about and just reiterate the importance of this. And because if council approves that position, then we're going to go forward and start the recruitment so we get someone on board.
So the Real-Time Crime Center really is pulling together assets from all over the city, whether they be license plate readers, individual businesses that want to share information with us. If you think about every time there's a camera in town, you can imagine there's a screen. You can't watch thousands of screens. And so a Real-Time Crime Center manager is going to use software to dictate what screens are important, what screens need to be turned on and activated for a particular area, in case of like an armed robbery or an active shooter. And having someone that can coordinate that information and make it usable is important, because just having access to all the information, it doesn't really mean anything until you can take it and make it digestible to where you can use it in the field, whether for after the fact investigation or in a real time situation. So one person in the beginning, and it's just something that I think you're seeing across the country. Ours obviously will be smaller than Tulsa's, but ours will be scalable for the amount of people that we have living in Broken Arrow.
Civilian also.
Yes, it's a civilian position. It's kind of halfway between an intelligence officer, a crime analyst, and someone that's really kind of managing in the moment and after the fact investigations. It's something that's going to be necessary for every police department moving forward. Our intent is to make sure, as our partners around us have theirs, that we are seamlessly sharing information back and forth to make ourselves collectively safer.
So Chief, talk about some of the efforts of the foundation. You had some interesting news that was you shared with me recently about their efforts to help secure funding.
Yeah, so I approached several individuals in the city about civic-minded individuals about creating a foundation, much like the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office has a foundation, and they officially got their 501c3 nonprofit status from the IRS. They will be securing donations to benefit the police department. Those could be quality of life issues, or they could be technology issues. Their number one focus right now is securing a grant to help us build out the Real-Time Crime Center. So we have in the budget, in last year's budget, and the current budget, and going forward, is our license plate readers. So that's one aspect of that. In the proposed budget, you'll see there's some software that we need to pull everything together. So you've got to have a software package to make all that information intelligible. The foundation is going to concentrate on taking our current EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and turning it into a / real-time crime center. So it'll accomplish two different goals. The first goal will be a place for all that to come together to use all the software that's in the budget. The second goal is those cameras and those assets can also be used in a storm situation, natural disasters, so it will double. So their foundation is concentrating right now. Their number one priority is to secure funding so we can build that into a real-time crime center. Fortunately, we have the space, we have the footage, we have the infrastructure, so it's really about just assets to put in there to create a workable center.
And that's going to be on the other side of the meeting rooms, is that right?
So if you walk out of dispatch, that area where all the screens are, that is our emergency operations center. That will be the real-time crime center. But combining those assets together will, number one, make a real-time crime center. Number two, make our emergency operations center much more functional. So luckily, we don't have to build a building. You know, the power's there. It's really just about, you know, putting up extra screens, putting in the infrastructure, the computer servers, and all that kind of good stuff. And down the road, this foundation will be available to raise money for other things too.
Anybody have any questions of the chief? I mean, we are really excited about this and moving in this direction. I just know this is going to be helping with the deployment of officers and utilizing our resources much better, especially if we're able to bring some of the businesses together to help us with their cameras to be able to actually look and see what's going on, and then use our officers however we need in order to address whatever situation we're faced with.
Question. So is this person going to be sitting and watching a camera just looking for people to break the law?
No. So we don't enforce the law by cameras.
Okay.
It helps us with after action. So basically, the software helps the one person manage the center. So if you are doing an after the fact investigation and something happened in a particular area, the software can find out what assets do we have in that area, whether it be city owned, privately owned, that are donating, whatever that is, and say, this looks like might be what you're looking for. That software is smart enough to know, I'm looking for this, okay? During the moment, if let's say we had an armed robbery, the software can tie into dispatch at some point in time, which would be a future enhancement. It can say, oh, you have an armed robbery in this location, you have 30 assets, do you want to see them? And we can set it up where it turns them on automatically, or the person can manage it. That can be seen by not only the person working in the real-time crime center, but we can set up to where it's actually broadcast to the officers, the cars that are going on. So think about an active shooter situation. If you knew what hallway, what room, what office, you can get there quicker and end the threat.
So could this be also used like for prevention? So like say this person reads the summary of what happened the day before, and then are they able to go back to look at an area and see what's going on, so then they can work in that area to hopefully prevent things in the future?
So if it's like shopping. So the more information, like on Amazon, if you're looking for a bath mat, the more you put in, the more narrow your search is going to be. So if you say you're looking for, you know, a blue bath mat, okay, you're going to get 1,000. A blue bath mat that's this size, a blue bath mat that has an engraving on this side. I mean, it gets narrower and narrower. So you can go back in time depending on the footage from whoever the donor is, and you can see something you're looking for. And the software will help you look for that it'll just look through it automatically. So you just type in what you're looking for, and it searches all that footage and says, here's something that looks like what you're looking for. So you can go backwards if you're looking for activity that you want to prevent in the future. You can go back and look for a possible suspect for a particular crime. It also helps you as far as being on the lookout for a car that was involved in some kind of crime in Tulsa. We can put it in the system, and it can say, hey, this person just drove into Broken Arrow and they committed these 4 crimes. Do you want to see them? And we can say, where are they? And then we can actually deploy to prevent the crime.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, would this person, because if this person's like in charge of like looking at the summaries that have happened on the 3 shifts before, you know, when they weren't there or whatever, but then able to work with that information, work with the field officers, that type of thing, to let them, I mean, you may have someone that's doing that now, I don't know, but like to be aware, to kind of bring it all together, so that way it's not just one shift knowing what's going on in their shift, it'll be like
Yes,
everybody.
so we'll have super users, so we'll identify people that will be able to access the system within parameters, whether it be a sergeant or a watch commander that can actually use it any time of the day. So on midnight shift, let's say they've had 3 break-ins of cars at 2 o'clock in the morning. That watch commander or whoever those super users that we identify can say, I'm looking for this activity in this area between this time and this time. And in real time, they can see that. Or they can say, what happened in the last week? They can see between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, I want to know if this thing happened or this vehicle was seen in any of these areas where these crimes are occurring. And so that intelligence can be used 24 hours a day, but we need to have someone that's managing the system, as new donors come onto the system and say, hey, I want to give you my cameras to be a civic steward, someone has to manage that input of all those cameras to make sure it's done properly, that all the agreements are in place. And so the manager is the key holder, but we'll have users out on shifts and detectives and everything else.
That's good. So it's not just the one person that's the manager that's in charge of all the information, and for some reason they're on training or sick or vacation. There'll still be a lot of people within the police department that can just log on just like they can if they're there.
Yeah, the cameras are only good as if you got eyeballs on it. So the software is what's the magic. That's where the magic happens, because that is a false multiplier. So that software will allow one person to run it or anybody to log on and use it for their specific purposes.
I don't have a question, but I will just say I know from professional experience, this type of center is cutting edge for law enforcement. I know that TPD had theirs first, but Broken Arrow, I know from talking with the chief and his team, they weren't too concerned with being first, they were concerned with being right. And I appreciate that. I know you guys did a lot of work and research and spent a lot of time putting this together so it's done right, so you don't have to go back and make a lot of changes, or I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. So I just want to say thank you to you and your team for staying on top of things and keeping our city cutting edge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief. I also want to mention is that we're going to continue to recommend that we overhire to anticipate retirements. You know, obviously, being below 157 right now, I believe we're at about 160, so we are just a couple of over strength, but I would like to continue to anticipate those retirements, because obviously when you're below that, it has an effect on folks that are available to work and overtime. And so the recommendation is to continue to look at what we have. And so we talked about a couple of years ago looking at 12, trying to get 12 into each academy. And that's something that I would like to talk to the chief about, continue to do going forward, you know, provided that we have 12 people that meet the qualifications we have for Broken Arrow. So I feel really good about where we were just a couple of years ago. Now we're just slightly over, but obviously the ebb and flow of folks retired needs to be taken in consideration.
So do we know what the overhiring, has that cut down a lot on callbacks, having to bring someone back to fill? Oh, I don't know where you went. You know, because I know that's also, you know, that's a real problem, is the callbacks, and I would think this would alleviate that.
So there's two challenges with hiring people. Number one, if you tell me I get to have a person a day, it's a year before they're on staff. You got to recruit them, you got to find them, you got to test them, you got to put them through the academy, you got to put them through field training, and it's probably 2 more years before they really know what they're doing. The other challenge of that is when you have, let's say we hire 12 people. Okay, they're going to go through the academy, we have an academy staff, but during that academy staff process, there are 30 or 40 different instructors that are coming from the field that are going out and teaching those particular topics, because they're subject matter experts, so you're pulling them out of the field, okay? And then, so you've got the one person they're teaching, and you got the instructors you're pulling out of the field, so your vacancies are double. And then you add on that retirements, vacation time, sick time, military leave when people leave, you know, maternity leave, all that kind of good stuff. So the number is never the number. If you got 157 sworn, it never feels like 157. So the overhire is trying to keep you where you actually feel like you've got 157, but you don't really get there until you're in a cycle where you're not hiring and training people, because it's a constant drain on manpower, because you've got the instructors, you've got the staff, and then when you put them in the field and they're out in the field training program, there's 2 to a car. So it's one person with 2 people. So it's just a constant a cycle. And the quicker you get ahead of that, the better, because you never know when 8 people walk in and say, hey, we're all leaving, or 2 people. But you know, or on average, we're going to lose anywhere from 6 to 8 people a year. That's normal, but we have, I forget the number, if we have like 19 to 21 people that have 25 years on or more.
So this is the second year we've overhired?
It's actually, I believe,
The third year.
This would be the third.
I think we're over by 1 or 2 right now, but I can see already anticipating we're going to probably lose triple that over the next year, and you never know what happens with the retirement system.
I guess what my question is now if we're in our third year, has it slowed down on the callbacks, overhiring? Like, is it doing what we wanted it to do?
It goes in cycles. So part of the other increases you'll see in the budget is for training. As we lose people, those subject matter experts, we have to find somebody else to take the mantle and train those people in that particular subject. So a lot of what we're seeing is we have to send people to training to become the new expert on that area. Then you still have the people that are retiring, injury, all that kind of good stuff. So it's a constant cycle. So unless you actually have an overhire in this industry, you're never going to be fully staffed. So the callbacks are always going to be there. And it goes in cycles. Like if we have schools in the summer, a lot of times your schools that are week long or 3 or 4 days long, they'll be in the summertime, they won't be in the wintertime, and so the callbacks are worse. Plus you add all the festivals and parades, because we love parades here. And all those things create vacancies that we have to fill other places.
I will say this, from a 30,000-foot view, everything he just said, I look at it as, I want the police department to be at or just above what they're authorized.
And I'm yes,
ensure I believe it has to answer your
yeah.
question.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to make sure that what we're doing is helping, or do we need to look at something a little more aggressive? So it, because callbacks, that's expensive. That's overtime and a lot of hours, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I know for a while it was really high. So I was hoping this was lowering some of those.
It depends on how many qualified applicants we see, and I think we're going to be better this year, and who knows what will happen next year.
Well, we continue to hire to those that meet the qualifications, and if that is 12, then we will. If it's something less, then we would go with something less.
Has our pool of applicants improved?
It's slightly bigger this year than last year, so every time they go through a different part of the process, we lose about half of them through testing and interviews. But the group that I'm getting ready to see is, I think it's maybe 7 or 8 more than last year. I don't know the reason for that, whether more kids are graduating or whatever that is, but I hear it's a good group. So you never know if I'm going to have 8 really good ones or 15 really good ones. I'd rather have 8 good ones than 8 good ones and 7 others that are so-so.
Right.
Yes, because remember, we lost one person that was in their field training, which means that's all that time and effort that's gone in.
Right.
That person, of course, that's what the field training really is to help us determine if they're going to be prepared to actually be out there on their own. And so I believe that it's working, and because for all the reasons specifically that staying above that number is good for us. And the only way to do that is anticipate where folks are going to be leaving because of retirement. Thank you, Chief. Okay, the next slide. So with regard to the fire department, I had the fire chief here, he's available. I'd like to recommend that we continue to overhire, and actually I want to increase that number, for a couple of reasons. Primarily is that we have a minimum manning requirement in the fire department, okay? By increasing the number but not changing the minimum manning, it allows us to get a lot done with personnel that are on shift. And that includes ambulances and making sure that when we have an 8th or 9th ambulance, we had 9th ambulance stood up for a portion of this year. We're also looking at other creative operational activities. We're in conversations. I know the chief's had a lot of conversations with the new union president about Station 8. And I'm probably going to be letting council know is that we put the money in the budget this current year to actually do the design for that station. And based on the discussions we're having, I want to move forward with actually having that station designed, because that's the area that we have the longest response time. And so I think that we need to get that station designed, so when we sell the money probably next year, then we would be ready to make a decision if council's ready to go out to bid for that station.
And that's towards the east?
Yes, ma'am. Be out by the
Northeast.
training center.
I apologize, it says for anticipation of retirements and for continuous operations. I have a typo on that, sorry.
Oh.
Anybody have any questions of Jeremy?
No, I was wondering where we were. That was one of my questions, is about Station 8 and what's happening with that, so.
Well, we still have to work out how it's going to be manned,
Mhm.
but based on conversations that the chief is having ongoing, obviously, is that he's recommended to me that we move forward, and he's spoken to Justin Sharp, and I think Justin is of like mind, is that we need to get the station built so we can get apparatus in there, because that is the area that obviously it's longer than any other area of town. And so I'm ready to do that, and I was going to share with you tonight that we let the new president get in a position, conversations with the leadership, and I feel we're ready to go forward.
I'm just thinking about all the growth that's happening. I mean, not just the amphitheater, but, just residents in South Broken Arrow and then moving into East Broken Arrow. And I think we're utilizing a lot of our, like, people move, like 3 moves to the center and, 7 goes north whenever 6 and 1 are so busy. And I just think it's gonna get to a point where we don't have the manpower to take care of northeast Broken Arrow. Yeah.
And so much of that growth out there too is being done without being in the city of Broken Arrow. And that's one of the things that we really need to work on, to prioritize that too. Because what we're doing is building a safety net. And granted, there are people in our fence line, but they're not in the city of Broken Arrow, which makes it difficult to recruit that. And so we're working with them, trying to get something coordinated out there, an effort where we can maximize that.
And I did appreciate, in your executive summary, you mentioned about discussing Life Ride and just the, how we're gonna fund that going forward, permanently, so, because that's been a major discussion that, it's just, I hear about it a lot, I'm sure all the counselors do.
I was actually
about
gonna
the
bring it
fee.
up under the manual of fees.
Okay, all right, we'll wait for that
I
then.
spoke to the vice mayor about it, and that's where the fee is.
Mhm.
So I was gonna have that discussion about it, let you know how much we're collecting, and see if there's, a council wants to consider any change in Life Ride. Obviously, we understand, I can tell you the amount of pain that the directors have when we talk, especially in the BAMA, when we talk about the cost of service, because that's where you can directly see it with what residents pay every single month. And they go through a lot of pain when they have to make recommendations, because they're trying to balance the operations with what it's costing the customer. So I see it. But at the same time, I don't want to be overly apologetic about our charges, because our citizens expect a very high level of service. And so, remember we talked, you learn in economics is that, you can sacrifice quality when you sacrifice cost. If you want the quality, there's going to be a cost to that. And so we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what that balance is. And I think a lot of people in the community understand it, but certainly there are those that, that they have a hard time understanding.
Well, and I'm just wondering if it has to be, because there's so many people that they don't need it. Because their insurance does cover it. And so those are the people that are upset. And I'm just wondering, is there another way that it can, I don't mean to trick the public or anything like that, but just that it's not just about paying for Life Ride. It's about just the overall service, for our community. And so that everyone's still paying for it, but it gives a better picture of you're not paying for something that you're getting no return on.
Just an ambulance service that you don't need.
That you're paying for another way already.
Yeah.
Well, we get to the manual fees. I
Okay.
was prepared to visit in whatever direction council give. You are limited in some sense by the little thing called the Oklahoma State Constitution.
Right.
Because balancing fees versus tax.
Right.
Trevor has said probably 94 times that it's clear what is considered a fee and what can be considered a tax. And so we want to have that, continue to have that discussion, because believe me, we want to make sure that we have the funds for public safety and for all the other departments. And it just goes back to continue to work with the legislator, not in an election year, obviously, but to work with the legislator to get them to understand that it's not just Broken Arrow. We're blessed to have a certain level of resources at a particular time. There are a lot of communities that don't have those resources, that struggle. And I know that if you're part of the OML, you hear it all the time from those communities. So, okay. So, the budget is obviously, when we talk about $491 million, that's the overall total for all the 34 or 35 funds that we have. The general fund, which is the fund that you probably think about besides police and fire, it's the fund that includes, which you'll see here in a minute, it includes parks and recreation, community development, legal, city manager, general government, and many others, which we'll show you here in a minute. It's proposed at $151,182,000. And this includes all the expenditures, the transfers in, and the ending fund balance. Last year, the current budget we're in, I should say, was $38 million, almost $39 million. It's overall an increase of 9%. I know Kenny, I'm sure he talked about, I started this budget off with the challenges. I mean, everything costs more. Council has made it clear is that when there is funds available, we're going to reward the employees because they are number one resources. So the increases that we gave last year are reflective in that 9%. General fund revenues, total revenues for the upcoming fiscal year estimated $93.5 million. Revenue sources combined are 7.4 over last year. So let me break this down when you're talking about 7.14%. So right now, building permits are up, electricity is up, sales tax was up a little over 2%. So that 7.4 is a combination of many different revenue sources. So I look at it like interest on investments was up, obviously, because of the investing your money. When I hear building permits, that's based on the number of homes that are being built right now. So it's not something that you can count on ongoing at that level. So you have to determine based on construction what you can anticipate, but it's up this year. Court revenues for the first time in a number of years is actually up. And so we're coming into FY 2025 obviously with that type of additional revenue. So it's a good way to start this year. For this upcoming year, we're projecting sales tax. I mean, obviously, it was just a little over 2%. So we scaled it back a little bit because we did have a couple of months that we were actually, it was below, it was negative. And I was looking at some of the results for the neighboring communities yesterday, and a lot of communities were in the negative for more than we were. And so I'm a little concerned with right now with where we are, that we want to try to be conservative this year. This is the breakdown of that 31 million. Personnel services, you can see other service and materials, and actually the use of the ARPA funds to free those funds up for other capital improvements that we're going to be using to make sure that we comply with the law. So,
Do you have a breakdown of what we've utilized the ARPA funds for so far?
We can get that to you. Cindy has that. So general fund transfers out. You want to touch on this, Cindy?
Yeah, that Bama is, we transfer out, that's the 1%, beta is 5.3, that's the 600,000 that we normally do, and then we did move some for capital projects. And the police and fire get their share of the current revenues, which is 34 million for police and 28.7, so our total expenditures, including transfers, is $115,674,000.
Okay. So what I wanted to do this time, because we did 2 nights last year, is I wanted to specifically list the departments of the general fund and their pages to see if the council members had any questions. And believe me, every director is ready to come up and answer any question the council members may have about the budget. But those are the specific pages. City Attorney, Human Resources, Kelly and Charlie Bright volunteered to actually give their budget message this year. Didn't you, Charlie?
Aw. Thank you.
Voluntold.
We love that.
They will do just as well as every other director has the last few years. Information technology, Scott's presented to you before. He has everybody scared every single day about cybersecurity, which we should be a little bit. We had a good discussion about it this morning, the importance of making sure everyone understands that everyone needs to be accountable for maintaining our system. And the latest incident that happened with St. John's is just a reminder of the importance of being vigilant. Community development, finance, general government, which is included, many different expenses for the general fund, city and the court clerk, portions of street and stormwater and the parks. So I wasn't sure if the council members had any questions specifically. I know you had a chance to go through some of those, but there may be something operational that you have a question about.
I just, Kelly, I had asked you a question before, and I think this will be easy with HR. What are professional and technical services? That's what it was. That, there was like in 2023, it was at like 300, page 13. I can show it to you, what page I'm on. Under other services and charges, I assume PROF stands for professional. Professional and tech services.
Yep, so those are gonna be our training and our systems, which is our HRIS system and our
Okay.
ERP system.
So like is that like a software?
Yeah.
Or, okay, that's
Yeah,
what
and I'll
I
go through that in my
assumed, it was a software upgrade that we did, but,
Yep.
okay.
It was also the consultant for the classification.
The carryover.
Okay, okay.
Well, with that,
That was
Kelly,
it.
won't you just?
See the next slide, isn't she?
No, but I can just say that any questions that council members have, I mean, if you have a question after today, obviously, the June 3rd is the public hearing, and then June 17th is the adoption. I know you'll spend some more time on the budget between now, and so if you have a question about any of those departments, just let us know, and we'll get you
I
an answer.
kind of just
We'll
wanted
get
to
it to everybody.
throw out a question and see if Tom can answer it. I just want to like.
Just pick it,
Just like pick a
anything.
number and see if he knows.
He probably can.
I know.
I'm gonna put my money on Tom.
Okay, Kelly, the floor's yours.
Good evening.
You want the clicker or do you want me to?
You can, I'll just look at you maybe. Thanks for the opportunity. When Norm told me that it was my turn, I was more than happy to give the presentation and talk about our department. We are a transactional partner that gets to strategically support all of our departments. We are one department within the city that has the opportunity to touch every single department within us. There's 15 departments that we support, including ourselves. And we get to be a part of those 1,000 or 1,011 employees, full-time and part-time employees, throughout the whole year. Our current structure is made up of myself, an assistant director position that's currently vacant, and myself and the assistant director both have direct reports based on that scale. We are requesting an HR specialist position this year. That is an additional position to help us continue to grow. You'll see later on the number of applications that we receive on an annual basis, and it continues to grow. It is astronomical, if you ask me. And that position is requested to support recruitment, support compensation, and support our risk management department as well. Last year, we had the opportunity to add the FMLA and benefits technician position. I appreciate that position as well. The future of HR, this is the way that I envision HR looking in the future. Having different divisions within HR where it will allow some of the employees the opportunity to grow. Right now, all of our positions are pretty flat. They are the same grade, and there's no opportunity for them to move up, and I would love to have different divisions where those employees could move up and grow, and we can continue to support the city. Our total department budget is just over $2 million this year. We did decrease just a small portion from this last year. Our top spend is training and development, which is 35%. Our systems, which is the HRIS system and the ERP system, is 22%. And recruitments and onboarding, which is 19%. Our personnel services are 64%, and those have maintained a little bit of consistency over the years, fluctuate just a little bit. This is something very exciting to me. This is the information on the jobs and the number of views that we've received over the last year, and this data is from July 1st until May 1st of this year. We had over 90 positions that were open in the city, not including the seasonal positions. We received 4,227 applications. And the reason why that HR specialist position is important is because Mr. Spurgeon likes us to be involved in all of the interviews for every single position that is posted. Each of those positions can have 8 to 10 candidates who are interviewed or more, and having one person sit on every single interview for 90 positions that are vacant is nearly impossible. So that HR specialist position will help post jobs, do recruitments, go to the job fairs, and be involved in that position as well. Our job views, just on government jobs, which is the program that we use from our NeoGov site, is 203,000 views. That doesn't include Facebook, that doesn't include LinkedIn or any other site. That is strictly from our government job site. We had 105 new employees, 6 transfers, 3 rehires, and 61 promotions, and that includes police, fire, and general government employees. Our current employee status, we have 862 employees that are broken down as you'll see, and we also get to interact with all of the different generations within human resources. That includes the silent generation all the way down to Gen Z.
Isn't that cool?
The silent generation.
What
One
is
of-
that?
There's only one of them.
They're really quiet.
They're really silent.
They're really quiet.
We're not allowed to speak.
Yeah. Like, seriously, what is this? I still don't
know
know.
what that is.
what
They're the
that
generation
supposed to-
above the baby boomers. They are the ones that were involved in the Vietnam era, I believe, and had children in that Vietnam era.
Before we go off this slide, Kelly, let's talk a little bit. Right after I started, I asked HR to be a part of all the department recruitments because, number one, I can't hire everybody because I know what I'm looking for. Some of the people that have the servant's heart. I know that's what council want as well. And so having HR be there to work with the directors has proven to be very successful in terms of retention, and I'll get to that in a second. Kelly, just talk a little bit about, are we having any trouble getting qualified applicants for any of our positions?
We receive hundreds of applications. For my assistant director position alone, there was over 150 applications last week. That doesn't mean they're all qualified, but 150 applications for an assistant director level position. Same thing with the administrative positions, 150, 200 applications sometimes. We don't have problems for the most part getting qualified applicants to apply. And I wanted to talk about the retention stats, but you go ahead.
Well, I'm going to let you share them because I asked you to put them together because also, obviously, I believe that if you have a high retention rate, it says a lot about leadership and culture. And I think that's very important that, especially to have continuity. And if you have great directors and you have great HR department and you're building a culture, your retention rate's going to be high. So Kelly, why don't you share with what you had?
Our retention rates for calendar year 2023 was 85.43%. That's just under the 15% turnover, which is great. Our current year to date is about 10 to 11%. And if we maintain the number of resignations and terminations that we have in the beginning of this calendar year, it'll stay that way, of course. So 10 to 11% is amazing. I'd love to be at that 10% mark annually every year, and we're going to do some improvements in our department. We're going to work on some stay interviews and some stay interview reports to see how we can keep employees.
I will say at the last employee luncheon, they were really excited about Stupid Q, just to pass that on to whoever's in charge of that. They're like, this is the best lunch ever. But I love how we do the employee luncheons because then other departments can intermingle with each other. And they may or they may not, but like the opportunity's there anyway. So thanks for putting the money aside to take care of that. And I really do feel like the employees really appreciate that and they feel like they're appreciated, not those.
I also started about 2 years ago a quarterly new employee luncheon to meet those folks. I hear their names, I see their names, I should say, and I may, if they're in City Hall, I may see them, but we have those every quarter, and the directors come and they bring their employees and they introduce them, and we get a chance to hear where they're from. Many of them live in Broken Arrow, many of them have actually moved to Broken Arrow, so it's exciting to hear some of the reasons why they chose to come to work for our community, and usually there's been many that have lived there their entire life, and then there are those that just by reputation said they wanted to be a part of this community, and then they actually didn't move here for this job, but then got the opportunity. So it's great to hear those stories. We just had one Monday. So.
This last year, the fiscal year 23-24, some of our accomplishments, we had the opportunity to hire that FMLA and benefits administrator position, and we got to centralize the FMLA functions, which was very important because we needed to be in compliance with FMLA. The classification study that you all had approved in this last budget, we are slated to begin that beginning this next month in June, and that will affect all of the non-uniformed employees. We were given the opportunity to revitalize the City of Broken Arrow University program, which was very successful. Last year, we received 39 applications for the program. This year, we received 60 applications for the program. So that's how successful it was. It's a great program that my team put on.
How many do you guys put through?
I'm sorry?
How many do you put through at a
We
time?
put one from each department. This year, we had the opportunity to add one from the larger departments, and I'm not sure what the final count was, if we got a couple extra, but we were given that opportunity.
And I do want to say, I've actually had people say to me, like, people that do not work for the city, I want to do that. I'm like, no, this
can't.
is special for the city. You want to you can come work for the city, apply.
Maybe.
We want 4,000 employees. I'm not sure you'll get a job, but.
Yeah. We also, we've expanded our training and development opportunities. You'll see from the budget, there is a large sum of money that's dedicated to training. That is for all employees, not just the HR department. That is CDL training, safety training, continuing education for those departments as well. And we've made some insurance and benefit improvements, and we continue to be financially responsible and continue to review those on a quarterly basis. Any questions?
Mr. Spurgeon, if I may, real quick, even though Kelly falls under my side of the house, Kenny and I kind of share her equally, and I truly believe Kenny would echo my statements when I said we've really never worked with a finer HR director in my career than what Kelly is and has become, and we are both incredibly proud of the job that she does for our workforce.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I had one question, I think you already answered about your HR specialist. I was gonna ask if that's gonna be like a multifunctional position, because I recall from my time doing onboarding with you guys that your recruitment department, you had, I think, one person doing the recruiting for all those employees. I know that was something you guys wanted to add, with somebody who can help with that position, so I'm glad to hear that you're gonna be able to do that and take some of the pressure off of your pretty much one person who is focused on that, so.
Thank you.
That's great.
Anything else you want to add, Kelly?
I appreciate the opportunity.
No, she
Thank you.
does a great job. I
Thank you,
think
ma'am.
She has added some really good folks, and there's some really existing good folks. Kristen Ross, I think she does a really good job, and a few of the other folks that are still there. So the folks she's added, I've had a chance to meet, and I just feel really good about where we're at, and appreciate your leadership, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
On your commitment statement.
Oh, yes, thank you. This last year, we had the opportunity to go to the women's conference, and they talked about the Pledge of Civility. And that resonated with me. So when I got back to the office that next week, I sat down with my team, and we put together a commitment statement, or a Pledge of Civility. We lead with integrity, character, and excellence. We are committed to maintain a professional attitude and provide exceptional service to all who enter. We are respectful of others' questions, concerns, opinions, and attitudes. We are as eager to listen as we are to speak. We concentrate on what we have in common, not what separates us. We hold ourselves and one another accountable for our words and our actions. We will do our best, be our best, and strive for better. We are Kobe HR.
That makes me
I like it.
cry.
And I love it when you go to a conference and you bring something back. That's what's really good, especially one of our conferences that we all go to.
All of our employees, we all sign that when you enter our building. There is a sign that is, that we had made, that has that Pledge of Civility on it.
Yeah,
like it.
that line that we concentrate on what we have in common, not what separates us, needs to be like a motto for everyone, like, in the world today.
And I know
In the
that
world.
whenever you get a job, like working in corporate America for so many years, your first impression of an organization is through HR. And so you kind of set the tone for that organization. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you know, we teach, when we was teaching in Career Tech, was that when you interview for a job, and we all know this, is that you're interviewing the company or business or city just like they're interviewing you. So this sets a great example to try to get the cream of the crop. You know what I mean? They want to go with that, so it's a great job.
And it takes our top three from our motto as well, the integrity, character, and excellence.
Good.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, moving on, as we have our Sales Tax Capital Improvement Fund, affectionately known as STCI. So it is, just to reiterate, it's a 0.5% of 3.55% of the city's sales tax. Revenues are estimated at $10.5 million, and we use this fund primarily for the pay-as-you-go type capital expenses. So the breakdown, I'm gonna have Cindy talk a little bit about the carryovers and also a little bit what's being presented to the council this evening.
The carryovers is just projects that are on hold or that we're trying to possibly get construction or something, you know, we're waiting for the parts or whatever. And this year happens to be $6.2 million. And we usually normally, the carryovers run anywhere between $4 and $5 million every year. It's just something we're waiting for, you know, because some of those stuff takes forever. And then Human Resources is asking for one vehicle because they need more transportation with the city because Kristen is all over the place. Information Technology is Scott's is the $500,000, which is all cybersecurity and the PC replacements. City Manager is some economic development and I think it's a vehicle. I'm not 100% sure. Sorry. Community development is some plans. General government basically is all the roofs, HVACs for the city buildings, and also a little over $1 million for Bass Pro. They need roofs very desperately. Police, what we did this year is police had asked for a little bit of like $2.2 million of capital, which is mostly police cars. We took half of it, went into STCI, and half went into the police fund.
I thought we replaced the whole Bass Pro roof last year.
No, not the roof. I'm sorry, HVAC, ACs.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was like, how many roofs do they have?
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Okay.
But it's HVACs up and top.
The HVAC in here works really well.
Yes.
It sure does. We all have our
That's why we have our jackets on.
It was hot for when I came in here. And then fire, this is to remount some ambulances, streets, is some equipment, parks. The rest of it's pretty much standard. In Battle Creek, we do $120,000 of capital improvement every year. The Historic Museum is just for some carpet in one of the rooms. And then we also replacing a generator at Tiger Hill. These are some of the HVACs. These are some of the big numbers, and it's not divided by departments. But the HVACs at Brush Pro is $1.6 million. A brush truck, 3 cardiac monitors, obviously is for fire, half of the police cars, 2 dump trucks, and a storage shed for event park.
What does that say, 1/2 of police cars?
Yeah, we're just
Half
doing
of
a
police
it.
cars
We're just
because
doing
we.
a half.
We're just gonna.
All smart cars, I think.
Front or back half?
So.
It's in section 4.
It's in section 4, and then the other half of the police cars and some of their other equipment is in half. That I like
Mine
that.
is also $1 million for half a car.
That's pretty high.
It's a really cool car.
And it's in section 4, page 8 is the complete list.
Okay, at this time, it was probably about 6 years ago, maybe 7, the council asked that, actually it was once the vision TAC was repurposed, that every year as a part of the budget that we approve the tentative plan for how the street sales tax fund would be spent for maintenance. And so at this time, I'd like the acting Street and Stormwater Director, Tim Wilson, to share with what's being proposed for this year.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My privilege to be here. A special revenue fund was created for the purpose of improving construction, maintaining city streets, sidewalks, related stormwater improvements, including the acquisition and replacement of machinery, equipment, materials, and including the installation of traffic control devices and signalization. Funding for this fund comes from a 0.25% tax that was effective January 1st, 2017. This tax generates about $4.5 million annually. So. Threw me off here.
Can you throw you off?
Get a little bit more money than you thought.
Now, we generated 5.2 this last year. Projects for FY 2025, control panel replacement, 438,500. Concrete panel repair, 4,050,000. Miscellaneous projects, 575,000. As far as our street signal projects, we've identified areas that we want to replace the control cabinet, controller, and video detection on Highway 51 and Creek Turnpike. We've replaced the west side. Now it's time to do the east side. And that budget is $42,000 that we have for that improvement. We're going to replace the control cabinet, controller, and video detection and install flashing yellows at South Aspen and Creek Turnpike. We're trying in an effort to get rid of all the loop detections that we have in town, go to the video detection. We want to replace the cabinet, control cabinet, controller, and video detection, and install flashing yellows at East Kenosha Street and Creek Turnpike on the east side. We do have two intersections that still have the loops, but they're being widened and future widening projects, and that's 101st and Garnett, and we have Olive and Kenosha. So that'll be the end of the loop detections. We want to replace the control cabinets, controller, and video detection, and install flashing yellow arrows at Kenosha Street and Creek Turnpike on the west side. That's at a cost of $43,000. We want to replace video detection and install flashing yellow arrows South Elm Place and West Edgewater Street at a cost of $21,000. We want to install flashing yellow arrows East Kenosha Street and North 14th Street. That's going east and west there on those intersections at a cost of $3,500. And then we want to replace Aspen Avenue traffic signal heads. Our oldest signal heads is up and down Aspen. If you actually took the backsplash off of them, they'd probably crumble on you because they're really brittle and old. So those it cost about $6,000 an intersection to replace the signal heads. And so that's why we budgeted $50,000 to replace all of that. We want to install pedestrian signal heads on South Aspen and West Florence down there. That's by the Casey's General Store. And as we do that, we'll have to install some ADA concrete ramps as well. So that's needed at two corners. Yep.
After we widen Aspen, headed north.
That's at a cost of $13,000 for that. Next, we're talking about installing the real-time cameras, and you had Chief Berryhill talking about his program and the real-time office and all that. This will be in collaboration project with the Broken Arrow Police Department to move closer to a real-time traffic control operation center. And currently there's one camera installed, and that's at 71st and Aspen. And this proposed project would add approximately 13 additional intersections, and that's to be identified by the Broken Arrow Police Department. Next, we're going to switch over to our road study. And this street maintenance program identifies projects between 25 and 75 range on the PCI, and that stands for Pavement Condition Index. And any projects that's below 25 require reconstruction. These projects are coordinated with Charlie's team in engineering and construction. Any PCI scores above 75 requires preventive maintenance, and that includes crack sealing, fog sealing, slurry sealing, anything you can do to increase the life expectancy of that road, the life cycle. So our overall roadway network PCI right now is a 70, and that's borderline of being good and very good. This next one is the cost over time. And it's like everything else, the longer you wait, the more it costs. So this graph shows the importance of investing in our infrastructure and stretching our financial resources further, extending the life cycle of the pavement, preventing deterioration to a point where it becomes more costly to improve the conditions to our standards. Next is our concrete panel replacement projects. We've identified the Woodstock Phase 1, and that's west of County Line and south of 61st, that neighborhood is. In other words, south of the high school is where that's at. And that addition has a PCI of 72, and it's we budgeted $575,000 for that project. The next project is South Park Estates, third edition, and that's north of Leisure Park, west of Elm, south of 101st, and that had a PCI of 64, and it's at a cost of $1,100,000. The next project identified as Valley Ridge Rosser Phase 2, and that's east of Elm, and it's north of Creek Turnpike. And that had a PCI of 70, and that's at a cost of budgeted for $450,000. The next one is identified as Indian Springs Estate, the fourth edition, and that's south of Jasper. We all know where Indian Springs is down there, south of Jasper, and that has a PCI of 67, and it's $1,100,000 estimated for that. Swanda Acres is south of 91st, west of South First Place. It's just north of our street facility down there in the Justice Center. That location, it had a PCI of 56 and at a cost of $825,000. All the concrete panel replacement projects will be contracted out this year. We did not identify any in-house resurfacing projects for this upcoming fiscal year due to the public infrastructure improvements needed to run the amphitheater project, and we have a deadline out there of July 1st, 2025, so we got a lot to do in such a short period of time. Those public infrastructure improvements that we're going to be making out there is constructing a new 43rd Street just east of Rosewood Elementary, and replacing a box culvert bridge on South 209th East Avenue, just south of 101st Street there. We got to reclaim South 209th East Avenue from 101st to 111th. Then we got to reconstruct South 209th from 111th to 114th Street. We got to resurface Evans Road from Highway 51 to 101st Street. And we have to reclaim 91st Street from County Line south to 200th East Avenue over by NSU. Our miscellaneous items that we have budgeted is we budget $200,000 for street markings. We budget $100,000 for annual street maintenance, which includes potholes, soft spot repair and all. And our annual sidewalk maintenance at various locations, as they arise, we budget $75,000 for that. Any alley improvements, we budget $200,000 for that.
Hey, Tim, before we move on, I'm going to ask Kenny to update the council on the options we've been looking at with regard to striping. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about striping. We've heard from residents, and so obviously there's been a lot of discussion between Kenny and Tim and Rocky, Tim Robbins. So would you share that, Kenny?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Mr. Spurgeon said, there's been a lot of discussion. If you drive Broken Arrow at night, all of a sudden it's kind of like, where are the stripes? We've had some challenges. It's not a Broken Arrow thing. It's across the United States. We've been using paint, but there are some other methods. There's a plastic tape that you can use, but ODOT a few years ago switched to a different type of paint, a multi-polymer. It costs more, but it lasts longer, it's more durable, and the only problem with that is there's only a couple of companies that can put it down inside the state of Oklahoma. But after a lot of discussion, which way should we go? That's the direction that we recommended Mr. Spurgeon, and that's the direction that he wants to go. So any new project that we do, any roadway widening, we're already doing that. Out in front of the high school, Albany just got widened to 5 lanes. That was already in our contract. But as we mill and overlay or resurface, Tim went through a whole lot of projects. If it's on the arterial, we're going to go back and we're going to put the multi-polymer in there. It'll last a lot longer than what we've been doing. Intersections, as soon as we can do those as well, we'll do that as well. The thing is, with the money that he's got in there, a couple $100,000, we won't be able to get as many miles as what we've been doing, but it's not been lasting either. So it's one of those benefit to cost, and we just decided, let's go this direction.
Well, is it kind of like what we're doing with the PCI, where eventually it
Yeah.
will catch up, and at least we won't be spending more, but even if we're spending about the same amount over a long period of time?
So what you're finding is the paint, it's like we've been using, is so much cheaper, but it doesn't last but maybe a year. If you got 2 years out of it, it was wonderful. We're not getting that. There's so much traffic in Broken Arrow today. We are the 4th largest city, and our traffic volume shows that we're the 4th largest city all day long. So you're getting a lot more wear on that. So we're going to switch. We won't get as many miles, but it'll last, and I think if I remember right, roughly 5 to 7 years is what they're saying.
I'm really glad to see this, because I get a lot of complaints on
Yeah,
that, for sure. I know y'all do too.
I
Yeah.
can tell you, not from experience, of course, but as you get older, you need those stripes.
Yeah.
I can tell you. Either
I
that
agree.
Or a co-driver, you need a co-driver to help you, because you can actually get lost on the highway without the
I
stripes.
thought you've done that before.
I help my husband drive.
Not that I know that, but I've
Husbands love when
heard
wives
that.
help them drive.
Yeah.
So let's talk policy here for a second, okay? This is where I need your input. So obviously, there's only so much money available in the street maintenance fund. And what I'd like to ask you to consider is maybe actually we need to do a pilot and actually maybe look at balancing the street maintenance we're doing with the importance of striping. So in other words, we might have to do a few less street maintenance, but we can actually get the striping done. I'd like to see what your thoughts are about that. I mean, obviously, there just isn't enough money. If I ask Kenny what would be a robust budget to get, I'm sure it'd be at least double that.
Easily.
So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I do get complaints on some bumpy roads, but it's nothing like not being able to see the stripes. I would support that for sure.
I would say that too.
And I think one of the things that we had talked about to get your best bang for the buck at the beginning is focus on the intersections. I know that's what Rocky and I had talked about before we went to community development. If we can focus on the intersections, that's where we get the majority of the complaints, and that makes sense. We could get further.
So let me propose this. I'll ask Kenny and Tim Wilson to go back and come up with a revision to the proposed plan that includes whatever they recommend. It could be 3 times that. It could be $500,000-$600,000 to get ahead, and we'll come back and I'll include that to the council for probably put it on the consent agenda at the same time as we actually adopt the budget. So you'll see it well in advance of that, and really try to make a dent in there. Let them come back with a recommendation on what streets could be actually moved back. I don't want to remove any street that residents call and we tell them, hey, this is on the FY25 plan. I don't want to remove any of those streets, but look at it and see if we could actually make that much more robust and see if we can make a dent in it.
And I'm thinking the streets that aren't lit as well. Like if there's certain streets that aren't lit as well, those are the ones especially that you can't, I mean, some of them it is the ones you drive the most, but I don't know, I mean, the intersections don't seem as big of a deal to me. It's the street, I mean, like driving down Elm, but there's a lot of places on Elm you literally cannot see this is where the center line is, so.
Let us look at it and come back with a recommendation for you either at the 3rd or the 17th of June.
I feel like public safety wise, the striping is gonna be a lot more important than
I do too.
and that's
I think people are gonna be injured more from something that there than they would be from a pothole. You know it's gonna be there, so you slow down if you go through that subdivision. You get lost. If you got a 4-lane road and you get lost on it and there's no striping, even on that outside, you know what I mean, coming through there. It's really a dangerous situation.
I think we focus so well on our PCI at all times that I rarely hear about road conditions. It's always striping and or widening a road, right? Like, I rarely hear about road conditions and
Every once in a while.
unless it's 81st Street.
So,
Well, I
By
mean,
my house.
it's interesting is once 209th goes under construction, all the complaints will move to Lynn Lane between
Yes.
81st and 101st, and also up in front of the school that's on 209th.
Yep.
90% of your calls will actually come complaints about there, and then that's just a matter of time to get to those, and we're pulling out the intersection. So let us come back and let Tim and Kenny and the team come back with a recommendation, and we'll have it for you, because I was hoping that you would agree with that, because that's what I was thinking is, and then we'll see what we can get done in a year.
so first of all, I can tell you all from a small town, because we don't have stripes in small towns. No, just kidding. But,
Wait, I thought we lived in the country.
Yeah.
so, again, but, what would it look like if maybe we changed our PCI level, like from 70 to redoing streets to 68 or 65, so it would change when we do the streets, we put more money towards the striping as opposed to the streets.
That'll be something that we can discuss and come back with you in that process as well.
It's a balance.
Yeah, to stay above, but
You're saying to open up even a little bit more money.
Mhm.
Yeah. And with this discussion, I would add, if the street is scheduled for widening under the bond, I would
Yeah.
not include it, because that's
Right.
money somewhere else.
Right,
So.
right.
Yeah. Tim, any thoughts?
I'd like to give you an example. Last Wednesday, we had a contractor come in and put the multi-polymer striping on Norfolk.
Yeah.
It's right in front of Reeser's, so if you get a chance to look at that, it looks really nice. So,
Yeah.
really
So we'll
durable.
have a recommendation for you.
Yes.
Okay, Tim, go ahead.
Yep. And that was at a cost of like $26,000 to do that street, so that gives you an idea. Next, we're gonna talk about our 2018 bond projects. And as part of the 2018 general bond package, $25 million was earmarked for residential rehab over a 10-year period, so that's $2.5 million a year. The next two projects have been identified using this funding source, which is separate from the street and alley fund. Chimney Ridge South, concrete panel replacement, that's east of Elm and north of Creek Turnpike. We identified that had a PCI of 60, and we appropriated $1.7 million for those improvements. The
Ward
next one is
4 is getting a lot of love, let me just say.
I was gonna mention that. I appreciate that.
Ward 4 is getting a lot of love.
And hopefully a lot of votes next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that, folks.
You heard it here first.
Thank goodness they can vote for all of us, not just Ward 4.
The next is Arrow Village, resurfacing north of College, east of Lynn Lane, if you can picture that location. It has a PCI of 44, and it's at $1.1 million appropriated for that.
Surprised I haven't heard from those people.
Well, now you can tell them that you're working on it. It's
Yeah.
happening.
That's right.
The totals is the street signal projects totaled $438,500, and that's 7% of our street maintenance program. The concrete panel replacement projects were $4,050,000, and that's 70% of the street maintenance program. And then resurfacing projects was $750,000, and that's 13%. That's a placeholder for roads that come up throughout the year. And miscellaneous projects were $575,000 budgeted, and that's 10%. So the total proposed budget for our projects identified is $5,813,500.
Kenny, Tim, you want to talk about some of the roads that the street department's going to be, street and stormwater's going to be doing this year? I mean, you're finishing up Challenger. I mean, we're doing some work in-house this year that's extremely critical to the amphitheater project.
I mentioned those a while ago,
Okay.
and it was It was the ones that 209th that's across from the entrance to Events Park. We just laid the top lift today on the bridge and the road that we built there in the Events Park. That'll be striped in the next probably 7 to 10 days. And we're going to be putting in a bridge there on some boxes there just south of the Events Park on 209th. And we're going to extend down. Well, eventually, we're going to reclaim. We're going to use a machine from Tulsa County. We're going to reclaim 209th after the bridge is put in. And we're going to go down to 114th. And then we'll, I guess it's 111th. And then we'll go on down to 114th and reconstruct that street. But we also have to do Evans Road, south of Highway 51. And we got to build the road beside the school there in the Events Park that ties into the amphitheater. So a lot going on. Even over by NSU, we have 91st Street over there. We got to
by reallocating our city employees to do that, the amphitheater work and all of that work. I mean, cost effectively, that to contract out the other, like he said, the concrete panels on the other jobs. It was more cost effective to contract it out than.
Yeah, I mean, we have to find the balance. I mean, if you get a contractor in here, they, really, you give them a lot of jobs, they have a lot of mobilization that goes on, and the more they got, the better price you're going to get, I believe, is how I understand it. So I wanted to point out is that, obviously, we have so much talent in the street department. We found that out when we basically change order everything out in Washington, and then picked up the rest on that, and that was amazing. The Evans Road was a part of the amphitheater agreement we have with Wagner County for them to actually contribute a portion of their sales tax from the amphitheater back to help us with the project. And so we're going to go in and we're going to take care of that. And then we're still negotiating and working with the railroad, but the new road that's going to be east of Rosewood, actually, we're going to be building the south part of it. Is that correct, Kenny?
Yes, yes. So that's 43rd Street, and we'll build south of the railroad to Gary Street, which is the road that runs on the south side of the school. We'll tie in. It's a short piece. That's actually scheduled to start next week, if I'm not mistaken. School lets out, I think, the 21st, and we move in at 4:30 on the 20. No, we move in the next day. So we're ready to go, and that's a piece he talked about as well.
It looked like that was kind of a low area in there.
It
I'm
is.
not saying too low, but looks like it's going to be kind of difficult to construct that.
It's a little bit low line. You're correct.
yes.
Tim, anything else you want to add or finish up with?
One more thing before questions and comments. One project we want to mention is it involves the utilization of the streetlight fund, and this project is budgeted. We budgeted $700,000 to paint the remaining 41 signalized intersections. And with that, be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
So let me ask you this. So we're about out of that contract, so we're going to have to award another contract. Am I right, or is that? Okay.
Can't see you, Rocky. He can't see you.
So we're going to have to award another contract for that additional work. So.
Yeah, my mom and my granny came into town over Mother's Day weekend, and Mom, my mom does not drive on the highways. Like she does not take the turnpike from Grove. So I don't even know how to get to Grove and not take the turnpike, but she can. So, but she's coming into town, however the heck she came in. She saw she was like, did you all get all new traffic lights? And I said, no, we've repainted. She said, they look so good. And I just thought it was so funny that she noticed that coming into town. And of course, she had to drive through New Orleans Square, and she just was raving, because we're gardeners, so she was raving about the daylilies and how pretty they look. And but those street signals, they really add something to our city.
They
just
stand out.
look so nice.
They really do.
Yeah. Questions of Tim and the street department?
Good job.
Yeah. Y'all just have a little bit going on.
Just
A little bit. I'd like to thank Rocky for helping me, because he presented this budget and he helped me with a lot of notes, and also I appreciate his efforts.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Great job, man. Appreciate your help, Rocky. Okay, so next up is the Broken Arrow Municipal Authority, also known as BAMA, and Kenny has asked to present this to the council this evening.
That's another one of those volunteer, no. So this section is set up very similar to the general fund for presentation purposes. So BAMA Municipal Authority is very much the public works side. So you're talking the stormwater aspect of streets and stormwater utilities. Ryan's group, which is going to be the fleet maintenance, building maintenance. Jerry Schuber's group, solid waste recycling. Engineering's in that. So that's pretty much what you're seeing here. This year's budget, proposed budget, is $179+ million. Remember, general fund was about 151, so still pretty similar on that side. Expenditures, transfers out, ending fund balance, capital outlay, and debt services all included in that $179 million. Last year, FY, Bama's budget was 143. So it's about a 25% increase in the operating cost.
Which is mostly the capital outlay because of stages of construction.
So the highlight, a rate increase is necessary to pay for the ongoing operations, planned capital improvements, and OWRB, the debt service. And we'll talk about that in the manual of fees, specifically what we're looking at on the rate studies. Well, that's the next item. 8.5 million pay-as-you-go capital. That's a lot of equipment, and the next slide will show it here in a minute, a lot of the equipment, but it's also, typically we keep about $3 million in utilities, and that's water and the sanitary sewer, for replacement and their projects that are in their budget. So the rest of that, about 5.5, is a lot of the pay-you-go capital is going to be equipment, as you'll see in a minute. OWRB projects right now is proposed. That's the water and the sanitary sewer, just over $20 million. And overall, projects in process for the FY 2025 is just at $83 million. Okay, with the additional load included. So how is BAMA broken out? The personnel services is 26 million, other services is 20.2, and the materials are just over $7.4 million for a total operating of $53,814,354. Debt service, that's pretty critical. That's the $13.56 million that we have to go back and pay the loans. That's pretty much about everything on the OWRB. That's our payment, annual payment is about $13.6 million a year to pay that back. Transfer out. Remember, on the general fund, there was about 20.2, 20.3, I think, came in. If I'm not mistaken, and Cindy can correct me, you cannot, BAMA, the tax is generated on the city side, and then it comes into BAMA, and then the transfer out is your pilot fee that you'll see in your budget. Payment in lieu of taxes, and that equates to about 21.265 million. Okay? And just as Mr. Spurgeon said, in your budget book, you will find the different groups in there. City, the same one? Yeah. City managers on page 9. The revenues on page 11. General government is page 13. General services is on page 15. Solid waste recycling, page 20. Engineering construction, page 22. Street and stormwater is 27. And utilities 29. And if you have any questions, as Mr. Spurgeon said, the directors are able and willing to answer any of those questions. If you have them after the fact, just let us know and we'll get you answers. Next slide. Okay, so back to that pay-as-you-go capital that I talked about. These are not the projects that I talked about with utilities at $3 million. These are now, for the most part, the equipment. You'll see the phone system in there, a fuel truck, forklift, some side loaders for 1.35 million, dump truck, street sweeper, and now RMUA, I'll come back to that in a second, excavator and skid steer. All of that's equipment. RMUA is the Regional Metropolitan Utility Authority. That's the Tulsa, obviously Broken Arrow, Bixby, Jinx, and Owasso. We share the Hakey Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. In our annual budget, we always put in something operationally that we need to do at the plant. If it's pumps, if it's electrical, whatever the case may be, and that's our share of it. Tulsa has about the same 300 to 400,000 in their budget.
So right there, Kenny, council
Yes, sir.
members have any questions about this? I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about capital. The 3 Peterbilt side loaders, I mean, any questions of Jerry with regard to trash collection or recycling? I mean, obviously, he's been recommending going to the side loaders in order for operations of efficiency and so forth. Didn't know if anybody had any questions about there.
Is it more efficient? Is it proving to be what we thought it would be?
Good question. And now for a good answer.
Good evening, council, mayor, vice mayor, city manager. Absolutely, and I say that because when we are out with a rear loader, we can pick up roughly 800 stops with 3 people in 1 truck. We're also exposed to traffic, and so we have a lot of workers' comp injuries on that side of things. Whereas with a side loader, you don't have the exposure to traffic. You're not doing a lot of the heavy lift with your personnel's bodies. And we can get about anywhere between 12 and 1,500 stops with 1 truck and 1 person. So ultimately, the best way to do this, and pretty much most of the businesses that do solid waste in the country have moved away from rear loaders and into side loaders because of the fact that they're more efficient, they're less dangerous for the staff, and they're just expense-wise, they can do more with less.
Are we only using them for recycling?
That's a great question. Not after this.
Okay.
So one of the goals is to eventually move us to side loaders for trash as well. That's why we bought the carts. That's what we were intending to do. And so as we've adjusted in our manual fees, what we've been doing, people are starting to get an appetite for the cart as opposed to bags, because bags have become expensive to deposit. So you can dump 2 bags at $10, or you can get a second cart for $7.50 a month, and it goes the whole month. So it just really doesn't make any sense to put bags out anymore. It just makes sense to get the extra cart.
That's good info.
Yeah, and that's very helpful when you're speaking with constituents, because our goal is to get them away from the bags and into the carts so that we can utilize the side loaders the way they were intended to be utilized.
So how many total side loaders will we have after this purchase?
6.
6.
So we will have 3 that we purchased this year and 3 that we'll be purchasing next year in that budget cycle as well. And we will, once we get to about 9, we'll be set for trash routes.
So it's how much to add an extra trash cart?
$7.50 for an extra trash cart for a month.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really, really cost effective. It's faster for us too, because it's just an extra cart. You're already there, boom, boom, and off you go. As opposed to getting off the truck and loading and,
So is that what we're gonna recommend for people who have additional bags or landscape leaves and the such, or large items, or we request a special pickup because often the side loaders won't do that?
We're moving them towards bulky. When they have large amounts of material, we're trying to move them towards bulky. During the spring months, last year, you'll all remember that we ran a pilot 2 years ago about green waste to see what the exposure was to the department. We were finding about 9 to 13% green waste in our waste streams. So the following year, we ran everything through the back end of trucks with green waste. And we were able to run the entire city with 2 trucks, just green waste. So we moved them away from trash and into their own stream. Our problem is they're full of plastic because of the plastic bags. Eventually, we'll clean that up, but it's a process, and we get people accustomed to it. So middle of May, we typically ramp up for doing green waste only in the back of the trucks. So we'll have 2 trucks that will go out and do 5,000 stops apiece of green waste every day. And then right around mid-September, then we'll cease that operation. Because at that point, the green waste is it's so little that it doesn't make sense to have the extra vehicles running.
And if I can add, I know when we switched to the recycling and being more sustainable on this approach, I remember Mr. Spurgeon during the public meetings always said, we've got to crawl before we can walk, we've got to walk before we can run. Otherwise, we would have just overdone it to the customer. Part of that side loaders was, okay, we got to wait. Then we took a zero interest loan. They could pay back over 7 years. We got our first 3 trucks. We want to change out that fleet, but we didn't want to do it all at one time. When we hit that sweet spot, as Jerry said, you'll start seeing a lot of change out on our operations. So, appreciate it.
We also want to make sure that we're communicating that with the customers,
Yep.
so they see what's coming well in advance. And so with Kenny's help and with the communications office, trying to make sure we're in front of that. So.
And right now, green waste doesn't cost any extra to
No.
put them in clear black. If you
No, it
clear
doesn't.
bags.
But it is a physical,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, you have to physically get out and put it in the back of the truck. And we do have our bulk truck that runs 3 days a week now, but with the systems the way they're designed, we may be able to bump that up to 4 days a week. So we've got a lot of good things coming in solid waste and recycling.
Another question that I just thought of, that somebody actually asked me about this week, and it just dawned on me, CNG. Are we,
Oh, I could probably give you his name.
so.
I think he's talking to everybody here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what is our,
So in order for us
Stand from
to
that.
change over to CNG, first of all, we'd have to have infrastructure, which we
Right.
do not. We would
Okay.
have to have, CNG for the layman is compressed natural gas.
right,
We don't have compressed natural gas generators or facilities to actually fuel our vehicles at our site. So we would have to build that infrastructure, and then we'd have to swap all these new trucks we just bought to a new fueling system. And so that was 3. We have almost 40 trucks in our fleet.
right.
So it's if it happens, it would happen over the course of time, like Mr. Schwab said, walk, crawl, all
I
of
would
that.
I would tell you this, we met a few years ago with a couple different entities that actually wanted to install the CNG stations. The challenge is they can't find a site closest to their main line.
Okay.
If the further they are from the main line, the more it costs them for the infrastructure to actually put the line in to where they want to go. And there's only a handful of places in the city, as I remember, to where the main line is that they can pull off of. And no one's been able to make it work. And there was grant money out there, and even with that, it was still cost prohibitive without a subsidy from the city. And if we didn't have anything existing, so it just made it to where it really is hard for us to justify that expenditure.
Yeah, okay.
Years ago, we even talked to the Broken Arrow Public Schools because they were interested in.
Yeah.
And the only site we came up with, we're putting an amphitheater on now, so.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the amphitheater.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Thanks, Jerry.
thank you.
Kenny, did you mention that RMUA, that OWASA is part of that?
Yes, sir.
What percentage was there?
0. So RMUA consists of 5 communities, but the only 2 participants with any flow are Tulsa and Broken Arrow.
Okay.
Our flow, it really runs about 42, 43%, and then Tulsa makes up, 56 to 58% of it.
So OWASA don't make up any of it then?
Owasso, Bigsby, and Jinx are at 0% of the flow, but they are part of the authority
Okay.
since 1971.
So someday they might be a part of it?
Correct.
I thought it was a long ways from OWASA down to there.
So you're actually right. The thought was Tulsa has a plant, it's called the North Side plant. I think it's on 66th Street North. And the thought was that would turn into like the Hakey Creek being part of the RMUA. But Owasso years ago built their own plant, much like Bigsby just did recently.
You ready, Ken?
I'm ready, sir. Okay. So the next 2 slides, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the projects. I won't go through each one. I'll highlight them. The clean water loan, this is your wastewater, your sanitary sewer, just under $12 million. So we just talked about the Hakey Creek plant. That's just the one that we talked, RMUA, that's the Hakey Creek plant. First three projects are really tied to it. The biggest one there is the composting facility. That's the solids handling side. That's actually one that we had received a federal grant, I think 12 million or so. So we are getting close to construction. There's still a little bit of design to do to get there, but we're looking at getting our share, so it's just under 4.6 million. I'll jump down to a couple other. County line trunk sewer. That's another phase. If you'll remember a few years ago, we did from the plant to about just north of 111th Florence Street, and we've got another design phase ready to go. This, and I think it actually says it all the way from New Orleans, 101st, to Washington, 91st. So that's the next mile to size that up. This sewer went in 1982, if I remember correctly. Covington Creek sewer improvements, that's actually probably a part of our consent order as well. Lynn Lane trunk sewer, that's part of the Broken Arrow Creek side. This one went in probably in 1969 when we moved our sewer to our Lynn Lane plant. So 69, 71 range, we're building two plants, Hakey Creek on one and Lynn Lane on the other. So the infrastructure to get there is 1970s. So it's time to do some improvements here. This is just property acquisition. Let me jump down. Oak Crest Sewer, that's a part of the Lynn Lane. It goes all the way to Lynn Lane again. That's $3.4 million. Already been designed when we're headed to the construction and inspection on that. So this is Oak Crest Elementary School, that subdivision just right there close to Central Park. Aspirin Creek trunk line, $400,000 to start property acquisition design. And then the last two I'll do together, Cambridge Lift Station and Park Lane Lift Station rehabilitation. This is Houston, 81st Street, Oneida Road, 241st County, 65th R street name, whichever one you want to use. So 81st and Oneida Road area. Cambridge is on the southwest corner, Park Lane is on the northwest corner, two lift stations. So safe drinking water. So this is the potable water side, $8.3 million. So VR, WTP, that's the Vergas River Water Treatment Plant. That's our plant out east. Raw Water Pump 4, that's when we built it in 2014, designed 2012, built it in 2014. We had an extra slot for another pump, raw water pump. Utilities Department said, why don't we use that slot and put in a variable speed pump? So now we've got some ability to change that flow from low flow to high flow. It's a great idea, and it's only $50,000 for the design, so, and then putting it in. A brine tank at the plant, that same improvements to the plant. Uwa, Grand River connection. If you'll remember, we came to the authority a while back with an idea to do an MOU. That MOU is basically done. We just need to get it in their hands, need to get it kind of processed through everything. I believe that everybody's on board to acquiring that high ground in Mid-America with a tank on it and making that work. Really sat down with them January, February, and got it kind of laid out and worked out. We need to get our money to move forward with that part of it. Lead and copper rule came down from the EPA to DEQ. We're in the process of doing what we have to do to meet that federal requirement. 16-inch transmission line. This would actually complete our south loop. So 2008, we were in construction on building a south loop water line, 24-inch and a 16 that would extend basically from 96th Street. Sorry, I don't know that name. In between Washington and in between, I guess that would be New Orleans. Tie into ours, and then we go all the way around the city and tie back in out on the west side. We have almost every bit of it. We're only missing maybe 3 miles. The 24-inch is about ready to go to construction. This last piece here would be from Florence, along Elm on Florence to really the Turnpike. Upsize that to 16, and then we have completed the whole south loop. That's huge with the development that we're now seeing on the south part of town. I'll just jump through a couple others. I'm going to jump down to the rural water and the Bigsby interconnect. So rural water 4, we're showing a couple of interconnections with them, or an interconnect. That way we can feed them. It's designed as a two-way, but we'll probably just feed them. And then the Bigsby is a two-way, Mingo and Florence. This helps both communities. If they're having a problem, we can feed them water. If we're having a problem, now all of a sudden the southwest part of town can get a feed from Bigsby. So it just makes our system more robust. This is something that we've been working with them on for quite a while. And then the last one I'm going to touch on is the 2 million gallon water tank. We'll end up bidding like probably a 1.5 and a 2 million to see how that comes out. This is located at 9th Street, Lynn Lane, in New Orleans, 101st. We own that 12 acres right there on the northeast corner. We bought it because, back to that high ground, it's about the highest point in Broken Arrow once you get to the south side. There's only like 4 or 5 spots around the 710 elevation. If I go lower, I'm going to have a 250-foot tall water tower. This will be another water tower similar to the one at New Orleans Square, probably a little bit bigger in size. We only have one on the south end of town, so this is the second one. Design's pretty well done, and we're about ready to head to construction. That ties to that south loop that I was talking about as well. That pretty much covers all the water, so collectively it was just over 20 million.
Okay, let me stop right there.
Yes, sir.
There's four things I want to touch on with the council authority. There was some discussions just preliminary last month about the possibility of putting the tiger emblems back on the water towers. That was not included in here, and if there's an interest, I can have Tim Robbins and his team actually go and get some estimates on those and then bring them back for council consideration. So I wanted to find out if there's interest in doing that.
Yes.
Well, I kind of feel like we should just put our city logo on there like we have in New Orleans Square. I get the history part, but we're not just the Tigers. Might never be.
We are there.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I mean, if we build a water tower and.
I know I stand alone on this, but I'm just saying, you know.
So
I mean, if we didn't take it off in the first place, it would be history, but now it's gone. So it's like we're recreating history with the new logo, you know, with the same. And then, like, do we do the old logo, the old Tiger logo? Do we do a new aggressive Tiger? I mean, you know what I mean?
I say if we build a water tower in Union School District, we put the Union logo on it in Union School District.
We have a fire truck in Union School District that has a tiger on it. That says BA Tiger. It has the BA emblem on them.
Well,
so we're not real consistent there, just saying.
I wish I wouldn't even brought this up.
Well, I didn't even think it was really that big of a deal, but then I see all the people on social media and they're losing their minds, and I'm like, if they're losing their minds, then they can raise the money and we can do that.
Well, like Tiger Hill, you can't even see it because of the trees. I'm so confused by that.
Yeah.
Good point. We actually looked into this several years ago when I was director of engineering. We were going to use a wrap on the tank because it had come up as well. For those that have been around, you may remember Gulf War. There was actually the yellow ribbon up there on it as well. They had painted a yellow ribbon on it for the Gulf War. But if you use a wrap, it's cheaper, and we can look at it that way. But the big issue is the trees. Yeah. I mean, you go back to when the Tiger Head was up there, even in the Gulf War in '91, the trees weren't that tall. You can only see the upper quarter of some of the tanks.
Okay, so we're not talking about the new water tank that we're putting out south. We're talking about the current on Tiger Hill, to put the tiger on Tiger Hill that you can't see.
In all seriously, is that, you know.
And no one can go up there.
Let's just spend all of our money on that.
Maybe we should just make it look like a tree and call it good.
What if we digitally do it and post about it? No, just
I bring it up
Can we
because
put some light
obviously
on
as
it?
council, you're very responsive. You talk to everybody and you listen to everybody, and so I think it's important. All joking aside, is that you have a discussion, and if it's the majority doesn't want to, then you can say you brought it up. So I think it gives you the opportunity to say that we discussed it, and you know we have a lot of needs. There's $20 million worth of. But then again, you know what? Look how popular it was doing the traffic signal poles, and so the balance of the armor all on the tires and the camaraderie and so forth. Well, that's what I wanted to find out, because there's time involved.
There might be someone that would donate it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If someone,
but the point is you know, can they do that on city property? Could they donate it? And like if it was, the money was raised, maybe that's just what needs to happen. People want it bad enough, they'll start a fundraising.
I mean, we have our logo at
bring the
New Orleans
tiger back.
Square on that water, on the water tank in New Orleans Square, there's our city logo. We don't just push it up there with the light at, you know, when we have our fireworks display.
And I want the New Orleans Square logo there, but
But the thing,
I actually want a broken arrow somewhere.
But the fact of the matter, I just don't really feel like you're gonna be able to see it on Tiger Hill. I fought with graffiti when I was at the police department, and you weren't supposed to go up there, but
Right.
people got up there, and there was graffiti everywhere, and that's what I heard. It was too expensive to clean the graffiti off,
And if
I'm
this
that
is
we
not
can't.
proof why we should not add another high school in Broken Arrow, I don't know what is.
Well, I s-
Well, that's another
Yeah,
logo
I
now.
was just
Yeah,
going to try to
exactly.
interject that one of the biggest battles that I saw years ago was the conflict between Union and Broken Arrow. And it came in over the newspaper, and it really created a lot of problem.
Yeah.
And I'm a Broken Arrow Tiger graduate, you know, I love the Tigers, but there's so many reasons not to have it up there and have Broken Arrow's logo, you know. I'm not saying I'm that much of an advocate, but I think it'd be better to have our Broken Arrow, City of Broken Arrow on it rather than the Tiger, because there's a lot, that whole western side of Broken Arrow is in the Union School District. And we've tried to seriously do things to try to come back, except for getting beat all the time in football by Union, is to bring them back together, you know what I mean, let them know it's one community. And I think that would divide it. You know, if you want to put a New Orleans Square on a New Orleans Square one, you know, I'm fine with that. It's just that when you represent your school and you're not the only school, it's kind of a slap in the face, I would think.
Well, you know, back in the day too, we always talked about retail leakage, you know, that people was going to Tulsa to spend their money. Well, it's because the Union District didn't feel like part of Broken Arrow. Well, now I really feel like we've turned that corner.
Because they're not called Broken Arrow Union.
And they don't want to be called Broken Arrow Union.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about Broken Arrow Union. What I'm talking about is that now people that live in Union District know that it's the Broken Arrow Police Department that responds, it's the Broken Arrow Fire Department that responds, and how important it is to spend their dollars in Broken Arrow, and that hasn't been that way for very long. I'm telling you, that's what I ran on school board, because the Union District in Broken Arrow, I felt like wasn't being represented, which, you know, we are now. But I'm just saying, I just think it's, and we are condensed. There's a lot of people that are in
Yeah,
that
it'll
Union
be,
School
yeah.
District, because we have, you know, we don't have acreage, and there's a lot of citizens that are.
Do we have a water tower in Union
No, I don't think so.
District?
Well, I was gonna say there's 3 tanks. I could put the city logo, the Broken Arrow logo, and the Union logo on different tanks.
Yeah.
Like
But
Marlsville Warm.
I will get a cost for painting, I will get a cost for wraps, and then we can have
Continue the
that
discussion.
conversation.
Yeah.
All right, so the next item is that, I want to talk about rates.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I actually had one before we left
Yeah.
before we got on all of that. Sorry. The South Loop, the 16-inch line, and the new water tower, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask it so everybody knows the answer to this. Is it going to help increase water pressure in South Broken Arrow? I get that question all the time.
Overall, pressure is,
That's important.
actually it does, because you need to be about 3 miles within close to the tank. As you get further away from about 3 miles, your pressure drops some. But what it actually will do, it'll help sustain the pressure, and then it will also help create the flow that we need. If you're way down in the very far southwest reaches, it probably is not going to help that much.
Yeah, mine
But for
is
the
not good.
most part, it will. Yes, sir.
The vice mayor needs more pressure in our shower.
As long as it affects Ward 4, it's great.
But just do it now.
It will help Ward 4.
No, I just know when I moved from North Broken Arrow to south to where I live now, so moved from where my daughter lives now to where I live now, it is a noticeable difference in the water pressure.
There are some reaches that are difficult. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Actually, what can help is if we end up tying into Bixby down there, and if we're having a low pressure or something, we're tied in, and now we can feed off them, and vice versa.
And they come off of Tulsa, right?
They come off Tulsa.
So what I wanted to mention about the OWRB, if we go right back to that, is that So when you create rates and you look at rate increases, I want to provide you some information because I'm sure this question will come up. The city, since I've been here, and I have for many years before that, has actually gone to the Water Resources Board on a very regular basis and borrowed money because there just isn't another revenue source available to pay for those larger ticket items. And so whenever we calculate what the rates are or will be presented to you, or a 5-year rate model, the finance department and our consultant have to look at what the debt service payments are going to be for that particular year, and then every year anticipating what the council may approve. And so we have to factor that in. And so you're talking $20 million. Normally, what's the term on $20 million to a number of years? 20 years. And so those got to be factored in. And so, I mean, we look at these every year. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at rates, I mean, if it's like Mr. Wilson mentioned earlier, if you wait to do it, it's going to cost more. And so we try to find the balance of what is the type of total of projects we'd like to recommend to you, knowing that it is going to have an effect on the rates. So, and the other thing I want to mention is part of the negotiations we have with our EDC contract is that we've asked that whenever there's prospects that come, that the proposals are submitted, that if we're not successful for a prospect, we'd like to know not so much who it was, but the reasoning why Broken Arrow was not selected.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is to find out, really, after all the process is completed, is where did you submit proposals on? And I believe that the city should have input on that, especially when we're responsible for providing the services, okay? But secondly is if someone doesn't pick us, we need to know why. And if we know why, and if it's because there are not adequate utilities in that area, and there are parts of our community that we all know that at some point there's going to have to be decisions made if we're going to be extending utilities, albeit the city does it or if it's going to be in partnership with the private developer. So it's critical for us to know. So if in fact, and I think we're going to be having some conversations like that in the next few years, we're going to be approached potentially by developers that say they would like to develop this area, and that what type of partnerships can happen, or could the city actually consider in order to do that. And so I wanted Jennifer just to mention how important it is to know and what the reasons were so we can overcome those, and also to be ready in those areas that in the coming years we can try to eliminate those areas where there's the obstacles, so therefore we can present ourselves better for future development, especially with job creation.
Thank you, guys. I'm excited to talk about this. So as Mr. Spurgeon mentioned, there are some sites within our community that have issues with infrastructure. And typically when prospects come into the area, they want to be able to move quickly on that. So they don't have, 18 months, 24 months to wait to put infrastructure into the area. So there's a couple things that we're doing, partnering with the EDC and also Wagner County as well. We submitted a couple sites to the Oklahoma Sites program through the Department of Commerce, and there's some sites that they're working with our people here to determine available utilities and how those work. So we should be able to get some assessments back of what we're looking for. It's a little bit difficult, and I'm not going to try to pretend to be an engineer, but to determine what size utilities you need for a certain area, and so really it can give us several options to kind of predict what could possibly go into that area, and then based on that we'll work with Mr. Spurgeon and the city to present that and say these are the areas where we're being picked over in this area, and this is why, and then council can look at that and make decisions whether we wanted to be proactive or just to wait for somebody to come into that area.
I think that's a great idea. I can think of several, if you're going along these lines, several places in Broken Arrow that say there's no sewer anywhere at that intersection to be located. So it costs a lot to bring the sewer to that. So what you're saying is that look at that and maybe do bring the sewer to at least one of the corners of that intersection to where at least they have that, or if it might be water or something like that. So at least the major infrastructure is there for them to pick up.
Absolutely, have it coming to the site. So one of the things that we know is that there's cities that have land, and maybe they have a lot of land, but there's no utilities available within that area, and so that land isn't going to necessarily move, because when people are looking, especially publicly traded companies, they're looking at moving quickly, and the construction process, once they select as well, could be 18 to 24 months after they close on a property, but it goes up significantly if there's no access to utilities within the area. And it's just not something that most companies can justify their return on investment to be able to connect into those. So yeah, it's a great idea, so we can look at those and hopefully be able to win a big company to Broken Arrow.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
So it's just very important. I mean, I think we're going to be having those conversations in the next few years as our city continues to grow, especially to the east, and making sure that we're going to be approached about providing service. And obviously, we don't serve water out there; we serve sewer. But I think there could be other discussions about how we could partner. Plus there's been 1,200 acres that was annexed a few years ago that we know is potentially going to be development. So it's exciting, but you just take, for example, if the city had to do it on its own, there's $20 million, and I can tell you the type of dollars that are going to be needed to make those expansions will far exceed what we're going to be doing like just in 1 year, just to try to do that type of project. And I know that the utility department has talked about the Adams Creek Basin and also looking at water, so they've got an idea of where those areas that are not currently have service now. But I wanted to say, as a part of the discussions we have in the next few years, I think we need to bring that to the level, because if we find out that as a prospect we're not selected, and they tell us several of them, we show this site or two, and water or sewer is definitely an issue. If we're going to eliminate that obstacle, we're going to have to make that investment, some portion of it, or maybe council may decide it's something that we want to completely make, and to see what we could do in terms of what that would mean in new jobs, or trying to develop some type of model to where we're repaid if people tie into it, if we make the investment. There's models out there that other states have used. Got to talk to legal. I haven't spoken to them about that, but I just want to put it on your radar screen. It's something that's very important to us to know if we're not winning, why, so we can try to overcome those obstacles.
Can we go back and see some of the projects? Can we have the EDC start looking into some of the previous projects?
We've had that conversation, and we're certainly going to continue to ask to find out what we can. So maybe something we have conversation we end up having to have sooner or later.
Yeah.
I just think that's a good way to partner with the community through economic development without really building a partnership or co-owning it with that company, but to provide that, ahead of time. And again, if you bring sewer or water to just one corner of an intersection, they have it. I mean, they might have to bore underneath the road, to tie into it. But when they have to go a mile or so, especially with the right-of-way. I had a question on the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. We've used that, and maybe you mentioned this, and I know we've used this for years, to develop that infrastructure stuff. What kind of interest rate do they charge? Is it a variable rate, or is it? I'm presuming it's a good.
And it's usually quite lower than the market.
So it is always lower? I figured it was always lower. I just didn't know that for sure that it was lower.
It's not, I don't know. It'd be interesting when we go this time to see, because interests have gone up. But we've gotten stuff is below 2%.
Yeah, I knew we had in the past. Okay.
Plus they don't start charging us the full interest on the full principal until completion.
Okay.
And so they charge a 0.5% administrative fee during that time, but we don't start it, like if we get a loan, debt service is immediate. We don't have immediate full debt service.
Well, that definitely is a benefit then.
I haven't seen a commercial lender that could actually match the terms and conditions that we have, because as you've heard, part of the reason why our budget is up, 68% increase in capital projects, because construction cycles that go beyond 1 year, and so we've got to carry those, and to have to pay that up front, it could cost us quite a bit more money that we'd have to capitalize in order to get the project completed. Okay, Kenny, ready to move forward?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think this is the last slide on that, and it's a general obligation bond projects. So currently, there's just under $108 million, which consists of the 2011, 2014, and 2018 bond projects in the construction cycle that Mr. Spurgeon talks about. And since Charlie's come on board as the director, I think you're gonna start seeing a lot more of the projects cut loose. A lot of this, we've talked about already, it's right-of-way. We've got an incredible right-of-way agent, but one person and the volume it takes a long time. And honestly, the homeowner, the property owner, we're kind of victims of our own success. The more successful Broken Arrow becomes, more people are not donating property as they used to do. So it's a process. Anyhow, $108 million in that cycle. Now the proposed sales we talked about is right around 21 million. As you remember, once we get into August, we'll actually know what that number is as well. It can change because our net assessed value. One of the biggest things that happens with our net assessed value is the improvements that we put in, as well as the private side. As they continue to build, that value goes up. When that value goes up, then those property values go up, and then we can sell a little bit more. So that's what's on schedule right now is estimated at 21 million.
What are the projects we have left for 2011 and 2014?
So 2011, well, Olive, that was on the discussion.
I wanted to say, but I was like.
And
209?
A Tiger, no.
I know one of them, but
yes.
so I just want you to say it out.
37th, 209th, which we just awarded at the last council meeting last week. So I don't remember, it was at 4.
Let's give that to Tom. Tom, what do we got left?
Yeah.
Well, there's a stormwater still in 11. It's a unnamed money sitting out there. And then in 14, there's several things still left. Obviously, the largest one is Olive between Kenosha and Albany.
So we
had
need to
that
figure out the
discussion
right of way
earlier.
along
Yes.
before we can do that project.
And some of our bond would have been for the 23rd Street project that's already under contract.
At this time, I asked Charlie to come forward and talk a little bit about engineering construction.
Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor, council members, Mr. Spurgeon.
You want to introduce your team that's here with you?
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Bright, Director of Engineering and Construction. Got a few of my team members in the room. Back here, we got Emily Rowland, who's our Environmental Division Manager, and Shannon Marshall, who's new with the City of Broken Arrow. She's the Special Projects Division Manager, replaced me in my old role. Arguably, she's the best one we ever had. So. I jokingly said I was voluntold to come up here and present, but, I've happily accepted. I was happy to come up here and talk about our department because, honestly, we have a really impressive department, if you ask me. We have about 30 professionals in our department, close to 30, not quite there, but close to 30 professionals, mostly engineers, some construction professionals, and now an architect in our department with some really exceptional skill sets. Kenny said it, I'll say it. I would argue that we have the best engineering team in the state of Oklahoma by far. I mean, when you look at other communities you compare us to, I would argue that we are a better team than a majority of private sector firms out there. I'd say the only ones that are better than us just have more people and more resources. But, you look at our employees and what we have across the board, almost every single employee came from the private sector, was very successful in the private sector, and, we convinced them to come to the City of Broken Arrow. So we have truly an excellent team. And I can't sit up here as a director. I've been here on the job for a little more than 2 months. I can't say I take any credit for that. I mean, all that credit goes to Mr. Spurgeon and Mr. Schwab for building an excellent team up to this point. I'm just lucky enough to be here with them. So talking a little bit about our team and our budget. So I've introduced Emily Rowland, who's our Environmental Division Manager. We break up into 5 divisions, and we have a lot of responsibilities among those divisions. We have, with Emily's team, they obviously take care of all the water sanitary projects that we've just got through discussing with BAMA. They take care of the RMUA projects in coordination with Tulsa, who handles that. They handle all the loan programs that Kenny just went over. They're the ones that plan it. And so what we saw today was this year's loan program, but Emily's team's coordinating that loan program out with a plan 5-6 years in advance. So, I mean, if you ever want to see it, we could tell you what we're planning on doing for the next 5 years. And that changes. We update it every year, but we have a flowing plan that's always coming, so we know where our money is going to be spent in the future. They take care of any design issues at the treatment plants. They're also, we break it up where some responsibilities go, but that division's also in charge of all of our right-of-way. And then I mentioned the CIP planning. So Shannon replaced me as a special projects division manager. That's kind of a catch-all for everything that doesn't fit in the few others. You know, they do a lot of random things there, but they design our parks. They take care of all of our public safety type issues where they need architects or engineers. General services, buildings, this facility that we're sitting in today, our art center, all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of site design. If you see parking lots or other just kind of site stuff that we're going to do, like if we're going to do farmers market, anything like that, all will get handled from Shannon's division. And right now, she is most importantly probably leading our bond planning for the 2026 bond that we're coming up on. So, Zach Smith, who is our transportation division manager, you know, primarily it's just the roadway projects, and that's the largest portion of our last bond. It's a large portion of most of our capital projects. They do an excellent job, but it's a very difficult job. I'd argue it's one of the most difficult jobs we have at the city. But Zach's doing a really good job of getting some projects designed out the door, but they're also in charge of the ADA stuff and some other various permits we do. And then they work with Tim Wilson's team a lot on the residential street rehabs and stuff like that we do, and kind of help determine where we're going to prioritize those projects. Blake Edwards is our construction division manager currently, who is acting as an interim role in Tim Robinson's position. He's promoted to the utilities director. We do have his position. We have it out for advertisement right now for recruitment. We have some really good candidates, and we'll probably actually start interviews for that position soon. But in the meantime, Blake's doing an excellent job. Construction, obviously, you hear it and you're like, okay, they take care of construction, but they do a lot more than that. They help with a lot of right-of-way issues with private stuff. They do all the inspections on private development for infrastructure that's going to be eventually dedicated to the city. So community development does an excellent job. They handle all the inspections on things that are just purely private. But every private job, not every private job, but most private jobs will have a portion of things we require, like bringing your water, bringing your sanitary and all that to the job. Well, that eventually becomes ownership of the city. We take that. And so our team inspects every single thing a private developer is ever going to build. So not only are we out there watching City of Broken Arrow contractors, but we're out there watching every private contractor as well. And then finally, Pat Wilson's running the stormwater group. I say Zach's got the most challenging job. It may be Pat, I don't know. But, you know, stormwater is a funny thing because the City of Broken Arrow, maybe people disagree with me, but the City of Broken Arrow doesn't really have a flooding problem. Like you compare us to a lot of communities, we don't flood very bad. But every time it rains, you know, our phones would say differently. You know, I mean, you know, I got sinking, I got erosion, I got everything else. And so Pat's team does a really good job of handling those complaints, those citizens' complaints, and I mean, and they're numerous. They're all the time. I know they come to you guys, they come to us, they go to the administration, but they're out there talking to the citizens all the time and trying to help as much as they can, along with numerous other tasks they got to take care of.
I'm gonna start calling Patrick.
That'd probably be fine. So I'll go back real quick to my other slide. So 2 new positions, as the city manager mentioned, for our department that I requested when I came in. Look, I started right at budget week, and when budget week came, I said this is what's important to me that I see in our department. And it's already been mentioned a little bit here, but you know, they've talked about today the capital money that's sitting there that's kind of getting that's building up is kind of getting delayed, and then the loan money that's sitting there and it's getting delayed. I will tell you the 2 biggest delays in that money getting out the door is us acquiring property and us getting private utilities to get out of the way. I probably have 50 to 100 million out of everything you saw on the board up to this point. I probably have between 50 and 100 million construction designed, done, ready to go, just waiting on those 2 items. And we dedicate a lot of our staff time to fixing those items, but it's difficult. I mean, for the right-of-way, it's difficult. It's just because it's a lot. You think about 1 mile of road, we probably have 20, 30, maybe 40 parcels of land on that 1 mile of road. And right now we have 1 agent handling that. And that's one project, 20, 30, 40 parcels on one project. And we got 1 agent handling that. So we requested a 2nd agent. I think that'll help a lot. The one we have is excellent, but it's just, that's a bottleneck because of the volume there is to do. So I feel like that's a really important position. The 2nd position we're asking for is a utility coordinator. Right now we distribute those responsibilities among several staff members, and it's just coordination with ONG, PSO, and others. Some of them are getting better to work with and all that, but it just takes up a lot of our time. And we think it would improve our system and probably improve the overall time period of getting projects out if we could dedicate that responsibility to one individual. That's all they're worried about nonstop, is get utilities out of the way. And so I think those are two very important positions to add that, it's not going to solve those problems overnight, but I think it'll help speed up the pace of how we can get some of these projects out the door.
Well, I just think it makes sense too, having one person work with all the utilities, because then they know who they're working with, and I think it would flow a lot easier with the different utilities that we have.
And we kind of do that now. Like, they do have one contact and they know it, but that one contact has 20 other responsibilities, and that's not their full-time job. So it's, but it takes up a lot of their time, and, they got to sacrifice. Do they do their other duties, or do they pay attention to that? And if I can get one dedicated person to it, I think it'll improve a lot.
Charlie, where will they fit under your division structure?
So, right away, the way it sits today, sits under our environmental division with Emily leading it. We're going to keep the second right-of-way agent under environmental as well. She'll just lead those efforts. It doesn't really just fit there. It's a resource that the whole department utilizes, but she helps them maintain their priority list and everything else, so we know what the priorities are based off the council's wishes, the city manager's wishes, and all that. And she does an excellent job with that. The utility coordinator, currently those tasks are split a little bit between construction and transportation. When we get that full-time position, we will put it just in the transportation department. Again, there'll be some shared use where they're helping the whole department, but their primary use that we need them for is transportation. And so that way they'll be working with Zach and on their projects, and other divisions will come talk to them when they need help. So, moving on, our budget request. So if you look at the engineering and construction budget, it's pretty straightforward, and really it's kind of funny because we probably spend the majority of the city's money. You look at the capital outlay and everything else, $490 million, we're, I guess, over 200 million of it. But when it's just our budget, it's actually relatively small and straightforward. It's just our personnel. So if you look at our budget requests, there's only two things that would probably stand out to most people. One being our professional services account. It's grown and it continues to grow a little bit, but really we use that as our piggy bank for the what if things that come out throughout the year. So, last year I didn't know we were going to buy a grain silo. Well, there's some work that,
we didn't either.
So there's some work that needs to be done that we start planning.
Preserving that history of Broken Arrow.
I think it's an excellent decision, but there's some work that needs to be done to start planning on what we're going to do with that. Well, that's what we use our professional services for. Economic development. 2 years ago, I didn't know we were building an amphitheater. I didn't know.
2 years ago.
Well, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So, it feels like 2 years ago. But that's the point, is that when we were doing our budget cycle that year, we didn't know. But a lot of that Kimley Horn dollars that we used to get Kimley Horn working with us early in the process was those professional services dollars. So I think we're up to asking for like $300,000 in our budget for that fat fund. But that's what it is. It's the what ifs. It's, what if we're going to build a parking lot this year in the Rose District that Norm's just worked on purchasing the property. That wasn't in our budget, but we can pull the design that they became available. It's a great spot for parking. We can pull the design fees out of the professional services, and we can get that project moving without waiting for the next budget cycle. Yeah. So that's one of our largest expenses you see in our budget. Beyond that, the only other thing I asked for, and we just have our building layout up here for us, because what you'll notice in the middle of this map is that we still, I don't know if everybody's been in our building, but we still have a pretty big cubicle farm in the middle of our building. I think 6 or 7 professional engineers in cubicles today. It's not the end of the world, but we talk about being competitive with our employees and adjusting to the market. It is a negative when I'm out there trying to recruit new engineers to come work for the city of Broken Arrow. When I say, hey, you're going to come sit in this cubicle farm. It's loud, it's distracting, it's all that other stuff. So I've asked for some capital money to work with Shannon, who I mentioned we just hired as an architect. She's going to work on some layouts of what we may be able to do with that building to build out some of that space and the extra offices. And we'll probably utilize Ryan Bays' crews to do it as cheap as possible, but try to get our people into offices as much as we can.
Yeah.
So project lists, you think about all the things our department takes care of, like I could put 12 straight slides up of just projects. I mean, you've already seen a few of them. If we go back to the Bama and everything else, like every project you saw in there is what our staff's taking care of this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future. You think about the money that it is. We've talked about the bond program and we've talked about the loan program. We're selling 20 to 30, 33 million a year in bond sales. We're borrowing 20 to 30 million in loan sales every year. So our department, just those two items, is managing 40 to 60 million a year in new capital projects every single year. And that's not counting STCI, new loans for an amphitheater, a city hall, or any of those other things. So, I mean, on any given year, we're probably up to 50 to 70 million in capital projects coming through our department. And that's on top of the private developer tasks and everything else that we're working on. So we highlighted just a few of the big projects that are coming up in this year that we're working on. Many of them have already been mentioned tonight, so we probably don't need to talk about. But one of the biggest ones being we're planning the 2026 GO bond. I know we've already talked with you guys a little bit about it, and we will talk about it a lot more over the next year.
I thought we already started the sewer line replacement in Melinda Park last year.
We did.
Construction money you've got ready to go.
Correct. I believe it just bid and we awarded it, right?
Bids open the end of this month.
Correct.
I just need to know, when are the streets gonna be done?
We're planning on doing that one after.
Well, I mean, we're not gonna do it till I know after these are done.
Yes.
That's why I was thinking we were
when
getting closer.
discussed last year, we were ready to go with the streets, and that's street sales tax, or is that a bond? Streets, that we were ready to go with the streets, but we also have water and sewer replacement in there. The last thing we wanted to do was go in there and do the streets and then tear it back
Oh,
up.
totally agree.
So he's got water and sewer line, 5 to 6 million out on the street for bid. We'll do that, and then we'll come back and do the streets. And I don't remember how much that was, but by the time you get done, I know it's probably a couple million in there, or about 2 million.
But it's budgeted for, we just
It's
have to
already
do the
budgeted.
process.
So
Yeah.
you're looking at maybe 7.5 million to do that whole.
And we're getting close to starting. Next few months,
Yep.
construction should start. Talk to my team. We'll be holding public meetings out there just to kind of make sure all the citizens in the area know we're gonna be tearing up yards. We're gonna be making it inconvenient for a while, but it'll be a lot nicer when it's done.
Well, for 3 years, I've been hearing it every year, so I'm be really excited when that's finished.
So, yeah, I think most of the other projects on this list have already been discussed, the water tank. But obviously, we're working on Houston, Garnett to Olive will be bid probably within the next month.
Yes.
So that'll be a big deal, and it's a big traffic issue for coming in. We discussed the gas line issue that's on that project. But our consultant's done a really good job of redesigning that road in just a couple of months, and so we're being ready to bid soon.
And the Innovation District is.
Yep, Innovation District is already out to bid for the sanitary sewer work associated with it, but the road work and some other stuff will be bidding in the next couple of months as well. So, later this year, we'll be heavily into the construction of the infrastructure for the Innovation District, Arrow Forge and Innovation District. Gateway signage, we've discussed probably a year or two ago now. We have acquired 6 of the 8 properties that we need for the entryway signages into the communities. So there may be some slowdowns. I think 2 of those properties are on council next week of the 6 for the 8. And then there's still 2 outstanding. If we struggle more with those last 2, we're probably just gonna bid it so we get the other 6 going, and we'll get those last 2 going as soon as we can get the properties.
That's good.
But those entryway signs we expect to be working on later this year. So
That's exciting.
I know the Vice Mayor mentioned Aspen Street going south. Design is nearly done, I think, but that's another right-of-way issue. But we are planning on starting the intersection at Jasper, that's correct. Plan on starting the intersection at Jasper probably about this time next year, or bidding it out this time next year. And then all of the roads kind of just stacking up behind that. So. I don't believe this is mine.
So that's in the back of your book. That's in for council to take a look at. Once again, Kenny mentioned that these are the proposed projects to be, for the essence of time, that we're asking council to consider. And then once we know what that amount is, we'll bring you back a final list. This is just the tentative list, approximately $20 million or so.
As soon as we get the necessary value.
What's happening with Elm? Like what, that from 71st to
Turn
the
lane?
BA? Because, okay, so a turn lane the whole way.
Yeah,
the
Kenny-
whole way
Kenny-
across.
Going
That's
north?
all it is. So
Yeah,
it widened a little bit.
It would go to 5 lanes, yes.
Okay.
Uh,
It
we-
needs it so bad.
We're holding a little bit because ODOT is doing their expressway corridor. They should select a consultant, enter in an agreement this year. They're gonna be looking at that. What I don't wanna do is go out there and put 5 lanes in, and then ODOT came back and said, oh, we're going to 7 lanes on that one too.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I've wondered, or have we ever talked about putting a stoplight at the?
We've got a stoplight everywhere on that.
Well, but next to, thinking about what the street is, next to Coder's office.
Oh, no.
Norman, on Norman,
No,
just get where the school is.
yeah. Actually, if you had a turn lane there, I think that would be better because
Yeah,
they would
it'll
be,
help.
they can make that left-hand turn.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll go through. If there's any other questions, we can. Okay.
The GeoBond stuff, we will read more in depth as we get later in the fall.
So we talked a little bit about the police sales tax fund, where that comes from, the revenues. Just wanted to highlight that for council, because that is a separate fund. Some of the, actually the breakdown on expenses. We discussed this earlier, but I just wanted to make sure I had a slide on it. Let's go back one slide if I will. Several unknown factors related to the state pensions are driving the attrition rate increase. There's a bill, I don't believe it's actually it's passed the Senate yet, that actually would increase the city's contribution starting next year for pension by 1%, and the cost of that to the city over 10 years is approximately $2.4 million. I don't think it has passed the Senate yet, so obviously that's a significant increase to the city's budget each year. These are some of the larger ticket items. We talked about those. And the fire, same thing with the fire. I want to share the revenue sources.
What's the miscellaneous, $83,000 for, in police on miscellaneous, like what would that?
That's interest and stuff like that.
Okay.
And other
revenue.
Yeah. And what is that?
grants.
Yeah.
Okay. Sprinkles.
And all this is in the budget book more specifically, but I just wanted to highlight it. So council, want to take a 5-minute break before we talk about manual fees? For council consideration is the manual, the fee, and I'm going to ask Cindy to walk us through these couple of slides with regard to what we're asking council to consider.
In section 7 is the manual fees. I asked all the departments, and there wasn't a whole lot of changes in the fees this time. There was some type, descriptions, but the ones that just really changed was the water tap fees, and basically the rates went up to reflect the actual cost of the repair. Cemetery fees, we increased by 2%, even though the CPI for cemeteries was like 4.5%. But we've been trying to keep it between 2 and 2.5% each year. In Battle Creek, they went up slightly across the board, but it was less than 5% in some of the categories, and some of them were only like 2%. Some of it was rounding. So I checked with Chief Moore. There was no EMS prescription cost increase this year. So everything in the manual fees that has been changed is red in the book. Then we had some solid waste and recycling. It was based on the rate model. Curbside recycling, they didn't have a business license. This is for, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong. This is for people who are from outside come in and do commercial or pickup, and their annual fee is $231 per year. The residential fee go up to $24.25. We're going to get rid of the bulky rates and call for a cost. An ad cart or Remove cart is $20, and loose brush per cubic yard is $20.
Jerry, how was the bulky rate? Wasn't it like $35? But it was still a certain amount, right, that they could put out at the curb?
It's 8 cubic yards. Get on the mic so everybody can hear me. It's 8 cubic yards is the max. That's what we typically allow. It's a 2-yard minimum for $20 a yard.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
But that's basically the only other fees in the manual fees that increased. And then the water rates, and I don't know if this is what you wanted to take a look.
Yes, so last year I talked to council members about the need for addressing some type of vehicle replacement fund. And there was a lot of discussion back and forth. We did some checking with other communities, and there are several communities that actually have on their utility bill a line item for vehicle replacements for the organization. What I want to present to council tonight in the rate model specifically for water, sewer, and not sanitation, but to stormwater. I have built the rate model to include, starting not this year but next year, $2.5 million being available for vehicle replacement, vehicle and equipment replacement. I just don't believe that with the amount of capital improvements for vehicles and equipment, the SDCI is sufficient to be able to cover what is needed. And as you've seen, for many years, we budgeted $1 million for police vehicles, and you've started to see it creep up a year or two. And then all of a sudden now we're at $1.5 million plus having to get to the availability of those vehicles. And so I asked finance to look at the model and come up with the rates that we're proposing to include. So this year, it would not be, the rates would be effective this fall, and the funds would accumulate. And so starting in FY 2026, those funds would be available, and we'd be able to break it out and show you what vehicles and equipment would be paid for from that vehicle and equipment replacement fund that's generating that revenue. So, I mean, obviously, we had Black and Beach look at the cost, and obviously, that's operations, that is the pay-as-you-go capital, that's debt service, and based on what they came back with, this is what we're looking at for the next 5 years. Now, what we plan to do is put together the spreadsheet that actually break that down in terms of actual dollars and show you what it is now versus what it would be for 2025 fiscal year, and also show you what that would mean in terms of based on a certain amount of usage, to be able to show you this is what that increase would equate to. So Kenny or Cindy, if you want to add anything in terms of the creation of the model. I know Emily worked very hard on this, and so anybody has any feedback in terms of the creation, they're more than welcome to contribute.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there real quick. So if you look at the bullet item with water and then the one with wastewater and stormwater, the first item underneath, the first arrowhead bullet item, is 7% for water. That's what we're paying right now. That was the increase from the previous year to this current fiscal year. And then wastewater is 7, stormwater is 9. That's already in the manual fees. The next line down is what we're proposed to, the increase that would go on top of that. So we would increase this coming one on water 6.5%. So that covers exactly what Mr. Spurgeon said. It covers that increase for the vehicle fee, as well as the increase we need for operations, for capital, and the personnel. That's all inclusive. And then the following FY26 through 29, it goes back to 2%. So if you take a look, the real difference between that 6.5% for water that we're proposing, and then the following 4 years in our 5-year study is 2%. That's what was really proposed for. The 2% was proposed for the personnel, the capital, the operations. That 4.5 is really to get you part of that I guess Mr. Spurgeon said about 2.6 million, about 1.3 million roughly. Wastewater, same thing. This proposed year of 18.5, that sounds huge when you're talking percentage. But when you realize that our rate is about $4.31 So even 20% on that is only 86 cents. And so you kind of have to look at it at that way. 86 cents per 1,000. That probably counts a meter in that as well. So 86, 20% would take it up 86 cents per 1,000 gallons. So it's not that huge, but the number looks big. Tulsa right now on their wastewater is somewhere around $10 per 1,000 gallons. The other communities around here are similar. Broken Arrow, and I know Councilor Parks, we've had this discussion a lot. Broken Arrow has basically given away their wastewater. We've let water cover it. We've got to get out of giving it away because there's a lot of effort on lift stations. How much did we talk about the Hakey Creek plant, the Lynn Lane plant? We're talking wastewater. Very corrosive environment, eats through the pipes, creates a problem at the lift stations. We're dealing with it constantly. Some of you drive down County Line and have noticed an aroma. We're trying to deal with that. That costs money. We have a good plan in place to deal with that. It costs money. We've got to put money into the wastewater. So what I would say is don't get hung up on the percentage. It's actually that cost.
Well, I think if we can compare, let people see what other cities are
Exactly.
paying, then
Exactly.
I don't think there'll be a problem.
And then it drops back in the final 4 years of that 5-year rate model back to 13. When we get said and done, Tom and I kind of ran that number. If you take the cost that we're paying right now on wastewater, sanitary sewer, hit it with 18% for next year, and then 13 the following 4, we're like at, I think it was 831, 832, under 850. We're still under Tulsa. We're still under the other communities. So I think that's important, and we'll discuss that at the next council meeting or in June. Stormwater, I think it's just a flat one. We jump up 5.5%, and then the following 4 years in that 5-year model, we go 2%. So it's not a big increase. I think it's a great plan. I agree with Mr. Spurgeon. We've got to find a way to address these vehicles. We're at 1,000 employees with this budget. We have a lot of vehicles, and it's just, we've got to find a way to address it.
I just want to get council's feedback. Obviously, you know, rates are a very sensitive topic, and every year we put them together and try to make the increase that we propose essentially cover what it costs for operations, pay-as-you-go capital debt service, and also to meet the council's policy with regard to fund balances. And that's very important to have the reserves available. If there's a downturn in the economy, we have funds available in the general fund to weather, you know, obviously, you know, we're susceptible to that here, as we found from some neighboring communities in Oklahoma just in the last few weeks. Same thing goes with the utilities. I mean, if we have a wet season and we have water usage is down, then obviously we need to be able to have reserves to be able to cover that. And we've worked very hard to meet council's expectations for having fund balances to cover those unexpected circumstances or what we might experience, which certainly could happen. So, obviously, the vehicle replacement fund, I think that's very important for all the obvious reasons. I hear about it from the directors all the time about the need to, you know, and they're trying to make their vehicles last as long as they can, obviously, because they are expensive. I mean, cost of trash trucks, cost of fire trucks. I mean, everything is, as I mentioned earlier, it's just so much more expensive.
So what vehicles does this cover?
This will cover BAMA vehicles and also police vehicles, really any vehicles,
Yes.
but I was hoping to focus it on the purchase of utilities and public safety. Because STCI, I feel pretty good about STCI when it comes to parks, when it comes to splitting with stormwater and some of the other vehicles, the smaller vehicles for community development and general fund. Where I get concerned is obviously public safety, because obviously we have to dedicate so much of our revenue per the ordinance and per the voters into that fund. And while they look very healthy, I mean, obviously right now the operational expenses don't exceed what we're taking in revenues, but when at some point with the growth that we're naturally experiencing, is there's going to come a point when the operating budgets exceed what we're taking in, and the only two choices is either take it out of the fund balances, which is that's what it's for, or have a larger contribution from the general fund, which could or will affect the other services that we provide. So that's why I think being able to offset some of that cost legitimately for especially utility vehicles really makes sense and is very justifiable. The other thing was mentioned is the only other item regarding the rates is the life ride. And we've determined that the additional revenue generated by making life ride mandatory is approximately $500,000. And so public safety, it is a revenue source that we're using to help. I know that some residents may never see it this way, but in essence, what you're paying for is to help pay for the fire service for public safety. And some folks have a hard time understanding. And if there was a way to offset that, I would certainly be glad to take a look at it.
I think it's the way it was put out to the public, in my opinion. If it was put out that it's to help cover complete fire protection and the operations, that's one thing, but it was sold as to cover ambulance services. But not everybody needs ambulance services.
On our water bill, does it say life ride?
Yes.
So maybe it should
Yeah.
say fire services and
See,
not
that's
life ride.
what I was saying earlier about naming it just something that makes it more of a complete.
Universal of it, yeah,
Yeah.
and not
Fire,
focused on
fire
ambulances.
services.
Because that's what we're wanting,
don't know what we
is
can
to provide that service, you know what I mean, to enhance that service. So it does make it seem like it's just for that individual ride.
Well, and it's also the fact that it was voluntary and then we made it a requirement, so people noticed it. Because they had opted out and now they aren't allowed that option, and so that's where the pushback is coming from.
Well, if we name it something different, I need to talk to Trevor, because then there's a possibility we're getting away from what it was before.
Right, that's a good point. I mean, you
Right.
can pretty much name it what you want to, but what those funds have to be used for is the fee for the ambulance service.
Okay.
Ambulance service is a public utility. Attorney General is very clear that for a fee for a public utility, even if the citizen doesn't use that service, you can collect that fee. But you get into it being a tax if you start then diverting the money that you collected for the designated ambulance service to other purposes.
Well, and if it has to be used for ambulance services, then it needs to stay that's what it needs to stay. I mean, if that's what the money is used for.
Well, that's
I
the
just
only
thought
reason we're doing it.
But I thought that we used it for, I thought that the mayor said that it was like for our whole, like our fire trucks, like all fire safety or whatever. Okay, if it's just ambulance, it probably needs to be
You've
clear.
got vehicles, I mean, obviously they've got ambulances, there's a cost of
Right.
operating the service. We did include in the letter that everyone received talking about the need to increase revenue for public safety. But you have some folks, as has been mentioned, that say their insurance covers. They say that, but we don't know that. We honestly, respectfully don't know until that actually happens. And we have a lot of folks that use the service that didn't have Life Ride that still haven't paid us.
Well, do we have any problems with like the insurance companies paying our, but you know what I mean? It's like, I've called the ambulance twice now, my mother-in-law who lives with me, and she has Medicare, and she also has another insurance too. So I signed a thing with the fire department being there. I signed a letter or something and had to send it back for it to be covered. But I don't know if they actually paid our fire department. I just know that I authorized for them to pay it. I mean, I don't know if that's an issue or not for insurance companies not
Cindy can
following
speak to
through.
No, I mean, we have some collections. I mean, sometimes we get a pushback about it wasn't medically necessary. But if it's medically necessary and our guys right now is medically, they usually get paid. And we don't have really problems with, you get your once in a while with the VA, I mean, or something, but those are far and few.
So it's the non-insured people that we're having problems paying.
Well, yeah, I mean, but actually with the Life Ride and everything, and we have a new third-party biller and everything, it seems to be doing better.
Oh, that's good.
So, and the fees are not as high, so we're actually saving money that way, and they seem to be doing very well with collections.
Good.
And then we also have a collection agency now too, but we had to get the new company moving forward before we start, collections.
Well, and insurance companies will always fight paying. They're always gonna ask if it's medically necessary.
But Medicare and Medicaid seems to
Yeah.
be the worst.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Any other comments? Kenny, Norm? Okay. Well, that wraps it up. I believe we're at the recognitions, and I just want to take a minute. I'm going to start with Kelly and Charlie. And as you know, I ask 2 a year to come and speak. And I think council knows by now the quality and the level of competency that's sitting in this room is off the chart. I mean, each and every person sitting here is capable of coming up here and presenting their budget, defending the requests that they've been made. And I think that all of them do an amazing job, and we're very fortunate to have each and every one of them here. And I also want to mention their staffs. I mean, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into putting the budget. I mean, you have some folks that are not directors that are here because I believe they care. They want the Broken Arrow to do well, and they're vested just like the council is and all of the directors. So I want to thank them. The finance team, led by Cindy and Tom, I mean, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. It's a very heavy lift to put this document together and make sure that it's
That's
accurate.
really a heavy lift.
Yes, literally. You know, Kenny and Norm and the city manager's team pretty much have a support role in getting the document put together, but have a very large role of working with the directors, making sure that they prioritize their expenses. So I'd like to thank them. And, you know, I'd like to thank the council members. Have to sit and listen to me for 3 hours is in an uncomfortable chair is an unenviable task. But I thank you.
Almost 4.
Almost 4. So I thank you for
But
that.
there were snacks. Snacks make it better.
At least you got a good meal before.
Yeah, I've
that.
got a good meal. Snacks.
No, but seriously, the council has a large responsibility. It is your largest responsibility of the year, approving the budget. And I can tell just by the questions and the comments that I get and conversation, I know you take the time to read it. And I appreciate that. I know the staff appreciates that, the engagement that you have with us, the relationships that you built with the directors. It means a lot to me because I don't have to sit here and do all the talking, because I can pass this on to anybody and they can cover the questions that the council members have. And that's what I've always envisioned, is having a very participatory type leadership team, and I think we have that. So I thank the council for your time, and this is just the first step. I mean, if you have questions that you would like to have answered between now and the 3rd or now and the 17th, if the public has questions, we'll answer those questions. You do have to sit and listen to a portion of it again on the 3rd, because that's the public hearing, so we'll trim it down. But I like to focus on why we do this, because the why matters. Why very much matters. And I know a lot of residents appreciate the transparency that we have. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the council members have and ask if any of the staff or leadership team has anything they'd like to add. Kenny or Norman?
$500 million. That's huge. That's a daunting responsibility, but it also shows where we are as a community. Under Mrs.
No,
Burton's
you're fine. I
leadership,
just
under your all's governance.
preventing
That's historic.
Council? Mayor? Members of council?
I don't have a question, I just have a statement. I mean, I kind of liked it last year how we had 2 different days, because it is so much. But the way you put it together tonight, I don't feel like I was rushed. I could answer whatever question I wanted, and I think it turned out really good, so I'm pleased with it.
And I think some of that is too, we know how to sit through a budget meeting now, though. You know what I mean? After years, right?
Yeah.
The first couple of years are very
Overwhelming.
and intimidating and long and grueling. It's a lot. So we
Well-
appreciate the staff putting that much effort into it and making it credible for us.
This city manager, I'm telling you, I've worked with a lot of them, and I say that, and then he'll want to raise again this year.
I don't know if you saw the budget.
I didn't say it in there, but anyway, he does such a great job with information, you know what I mean? We read through it, his first 5, 6, 7 pages, you read through it and you get a good feel. But then he does a good job of getting, I don't know if he put it all together, but getting all the information where it's easy for us to find. He does a great job, and then presenting it, You know what I mean? Having a couple of new staff members present their part, emphasize, yet everybody else is here to answer questions. I mean, you just can't ask for any more than that. And I'm telling you, not all city managers are as efficient as he is of presenting the budget, because it can be very boring, long and boring. But this one wasn't.
And he's been through a lot, so he's experienced.
Yes, he's been through 45, right? 45 budgets?
43.
43.
Justin, your first year, you made it?
I made it. It's been good. It's been some good quality time with this red book here, and my alone time at the house, so I appreciate it. But I'll yield the rest of my time back to everyone in the room.
That's it, Mayor. I turn it back over to you.
Well, do we have any remarks by governing body members? City manager?
I just want to let you know I'll be updating the council on a couple of items, operational items later this week. Just important things I think you should be aware of, but other than that, I appreciate your time tonight and thank all the staff members, and I want to thank Aaron and his team. What an amazing job of actually making sure the public has access to this. Kudos to everybody from communications and IT. Scott, thank you very much. Appreciate all you did.
I don't know if you saw the missing endangered person was located by DPD.
Okay. Good deal.
Just wanted to point that out. It was Tulsa.
Oh, it was a broken arrow. I was like, oh, is there another one? Okay, we had a citizen that was missing and he was endangered, but TPD found him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, BAPD posted it yesterday.
Okay.
That's good, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ruby,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Parks,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Green.
We are adjourned.
Really?